everyone, and welcome to the SBK Cheltenham Festival Preview Podcast. Thank you for being here, wherever you're tuning in, listening in, watching in. We're buzzing to jump into 4 days of absolutely epic national hunt racing. The sun is beaming, the daffodils are popping up everywhere, and my trusty podcast pals, Ross Millar and Tom Collins, are very much geared up to share their top tips as we built up all season to this. There's still great racing in and around Cheltenham, but for many major trainers and many connections, it is all about these 4 days at Presby Park at Cheltenham. So let's dive in. As I said, Ross and Tom joining me. We'll chat about all 4 days, including the championship races and the grade ones. That's what we'll focus on each day. I'll also get Ross and T&Cs to spill their handicap picks at this stage. But make sure to stay tuned, as next week during the Cheltenham Festival itself, there will be daily podcasts, as we will obviously have more of an understanding what horses are going to watch, to what races, considering many are doubly, even in triply, even in 4-timed entered into a lot of the handicaps. So a lot of the official declarations will be coming next week. So we will get cracking. As always, a big thanks to SBK. We've got some offers for you for this year's Cheltenham Festival. There is a free £2 multiple every day of the festival that has you have to opt in. There are 4 legs, so get involved with that. There's also 20% winnings boost on the first race every day of the festival. And if that's not enough, there's a Cheltenham bet bundle. You will receive £50 of horse racing multiples for just £30. So with all of that in mind, without further ado, and with the fact that there is that 20% winning boost on the first race, we will kick off with the first race of the festival. It is the very well-named Michael O'Sullivan Supreme Novices Hurdle, run in memory of the late Michael O'Sullivan, who won this race only a couple of years ago on Marine Nationale, and our thoughts will be with him and his family with this, and I'm sure there will be multiple connections, especially from Ireland, who will be desperate to win this in his memory. And currently, Copec de Board, even money, with Willie Mullins having such a great record in this race. It's really either him or Nicky Henderson that clean this up over the years. It's very much looks like Copec de Board's race to lose, if anything. It's a short price around him, and I suppose we will see if this horse can produce what he showed us at the Dublin Racing Festival. Ross Millar, you keep yourself primed for this Cheltenham Festival throughout the winter months, those long winter months. Is Copec de Board the best novice hurdler over this trip that you have seen? Does he deserve to be as short as he is for this race?
Yeah, I think positive to both those, Jess. Yeah, he was pretty special, wasn't he, at the Dublin Racing Festival? Having been pretty moderate at Leopardstown over Christmas, you have to say, but he barely jumped a hurdle and he still won. And that form actually looked like it had been franked. Went to the Dublin Racing Festival, did so much wrong. He was far too keen. By all accounts, had a couple of friends there who said he was pretty wound up in the prelims beforehand. Went too hard. Loose horse then took him on down the back straight and he went harder again. And it was just a case of where up that Leopardstown hill he would fall in a hole. Then the loose horse veered off right, which meant Paul Tannant had to check him up. I don't think enough was made of that. The number of times you see horses get hampered on that home turn at Leopardstown and fall in a hole because they can't pick up that hill is really prevalent, and yet he got back on the bridle and scooted right away again. It was a freakish performance. Even money, I think, is a very fair price. The one thing I would say is I think I'd almost rather take a slightly shorter price and watch him get down to the start with his brain still in his head. Like that's the big thing is going to be the prelims, particularly for the first race of the day. But they've got a really good team at Closutton. They'll, David Casey, Ruby Walsh, they'll have managed this and they'll have a plan for it. So I think he's the most likely winner. I wouldn't be just giving up on Salvatore Monday in terms of running a big race. 15-2 with SBK. He'll definitely improve for the better ground. He was moderate in the Moscow Flyer, but again, he still won. Didn't jump very well, but that was because Paul Tannant was fighting him, trying to get him to settle, couldn't let him use himself over the hurdles. He still won. It's a graded race. He'll love this better ground and stronger pace. I'm not mad keen on Romeo Coolio, got beaten in the Royal Bond. It was tactical, but I don't like horses that have to have things their own way in order to win. William Money would be interesting if the ground got softer. The one I do like at a big price, and I will back each way if he's still this price on the day, is a Rancy. He's a 7-year-old, clearly fragile. He was off for 62 days after being bought out of France, having won a French bumper. December 23, he was 14 lengths behind Ballyburn and Firefox. Firefox actually beat Ballyburn on that occasion. Was then missing for a long time, came back at Punchestown, 6 lengths, beat Will the Wise by, sorry, £6 and beat Will the Wise by 9 lengths. That was good ground, showed loads of pace, hasn't been seen since, clearly fragile. I think he's got a massive engine. He's around about 16-1 at the moment. If he's around about that on the day, I'll be backing him each way, and Mullins to have the 1, 2, 3.
Okay, Aranci's got the colours of JP McManus, who we know and has been widely talked about, has got one of his best festivals upcoming, considering where they are in the betting. But that's one of them that's a slightly bigger price, 16-1, and an each way selection for Ross. A lot of confidence around Kopeck. You make some excellent points about his nature, his temperament, whether this kind of occasion might just get him a little bit. It's the first race of the first day. It looks like the ground is going to dry out. Whether that's going to be play into the favour of one or the other, they've all really faced quite testing going conditions this winter. So it's going to be a bit of a change of scenery for a lot of them. Romeo Coolio, though, Tom, you have to say, probably does have a positive over Kopeck de Board in that he's visited Cheltenham and was an excellent second in the Grade 1 bumper this time last year. And Gordon Elliott, for his own reasons, bypassed the Dublin Racing Festival and did it with a lot of his horses. What do you take in that? Do you feel like, if you really felt like he had a horse that could take on Kopeck de Board, he would have done it? Or do you feel like that they're trying to sort of keep their cards close to the test, and if they want to see how good his horse is, they'll just find out at Cheltenham?
I think it's the former, to be honest. Look, they obviously think Romeo Coolio's smart, but I don't think their general novices that Gordon Elliott have got are as strong as Willie Mullins' bar one exception that we'll talk about later. He's got good each-way claims, Romeo Coolio, in a race that otherwise lacks depth. But should we just not start off with a winning favourite? A whole podcast latching on to Kopeck de Board? I think he's way the horse to beat in here. He's going to be my best bet, my nap, my banker of day one, if you want to call it any of those three things. I think he's pretty much untouchable, providing he runs to that same level that he did at Leopardstown last time in Grade 1 company. His jumping looked like it improved massively that day from his hurdling debut, which kind of was needed because he didn't jump at all first time up. I like that he's tactically versatile. I like that Willie Mullins has often farmed this race in the past. 5, 10, 15 years ago, we were talking about Mullins every single year when it came to the Supreme. And he's kind of hit a little bit of a wall considering his dominance in the race over the last 5 years. But he's back now with a star. And I think this race does lack stars apart from Kopeck de Board. So if he turns up, I think we're going to hear the punters roar as they go off in the Supreme. And I think we're going to hear them roar as they come up the home straight too.
Okay,
you can add me on that, yes.
Yeah, we've got
add me on that. It'll be my nap too. And I think we ought to point out as well, we're on the old course. Front running on the old course is no bad thing whatsoever, and plenty will get into trouble coming from behind.
Okay, we've got our first agreement of this podcast. I'll be hoping there's going to be a few matchups. I like to see a little bit of a clash between Ross and TC, but we certainly will enjoy them getting off to a flyer for the podcast. So Kopeck de Board, who is around about 10 to 11 as it stands with SBK, and let's see if he can begin the week with the flyer for the Willie Mullins team. Will it be as simple and straightforward as the first two races going home to Close Sutton? Well, the betting certainly suggests that with Madgeborough in the next race we're going to look at, which is the Arkle, which I suppose is really this festival's big disappointment, is that we have no matchup between Madgeborough and Sir Gino. They both have shown excellent ability over fences already. It was going to be a very interesting match, but that will be for another day. Madgeborough, for his own right, has been exceptional. 2 classy wins from 2 starts, and he's a horse that has always come with a high reputation, and he's already delivered at the Cheltenham Festival. TC, it's difficult really to know what can really show Madgeborough that same kind of that fight that we knew that we were going to have with Sir Gino. Do you think it's a bit of a formality for him now, or is something going to play a big part, and maybe would have always played a big part, Sir Gino, in it or not?
Firstly, if Sergino was in this race, he would be my nap of the whole festival. Unfortunately, he's not, so he isn't. But he was just a superstar. I think Madgeburgh's a little bit overhyped, personally. Now, that's not to say he can't win. Of course, he deserves to be favourite in this race. He looked great in Ireland last time. Maybe he is a star, but his jumping just isn't as good as Sergino, or as good as some of the star novices that we've seen in the past. At the prices, I'm willing to take him on. Look, I wouldn't be surprised if he won, as I say, and many people will put him in the accumulators, and that's absolutely fine. But from a value perspective, I don't really want to take the 8-13 or the 4-7, whatever price he is. I'd rather play each way, try grab a place, and if Madgeburgh does make a mistake or two or just doesn't perform, then we've got a chance of winning as well. And Django Bay is the horse I'm going to be with here for Nicky Henderson, the substitute for Sergino. It's kind of like bringing Messi off and sending on a different striker that's just not Messi. Look, I thought Django Bay was exceptional at Cheltenham on his Chase debut. Now, that ticked many boxes. One, it ticked the fact that he could jump fences at Cheltenham first time up without much experience. That is a massive benefit in the way of Django Bay. And yes, maybe he did come unstuck a little bit in the Scilly Isles, but I didn't think he got given the best ride. I think Nico would want that one back. The decision to not push the horse between the second last and the last cost him that race. And unfortunately, it went down in a head-bobbing photo finish with Handstand, who's a very good horse in his own right. Let's say Django Bay won that event, and Nico was a bit more aggressive in between the final two. There's no way he'd be the price he is now. I think he'd be maybe half the odds. Punters are seeing that 2 next to his name and going, well, he didn't win a 4 on a Scilly Isle, so he's not going to beat this Mullins hotshot. I don't think that's the case. I think Django Bay's very talented. He's got course form, and he's actually a pretty accurate jumper. If Nico's a little bit more aggressive, puts it to Madgeburgh, then maybe we'll see a shock. But regardless, I think Django Bay hits the frame, so I'll play him each way.
Okay, 11-2 for Django Bay. As you say, a horse that might have been beaten from what we can see on his CV, but it was an excellent performance on very heavy ground. It's going to be different. What he did on his first start over fences was there's a lot of confidence Nicky Henderson must have had in that horse to be able to do that on his first start over fences at Cheltenham in such a level of a race, in a race that's worked out very well. Django Bay, Ross, has he gone a little bit underappreciated as a Sergino substitute? Is he a Marcus Rashford for Sergino was a Messi, or is he a kind of horse that probably was always going to play a little bit of second fiddle?
I think it's like taking off Messi and bringing on Casemiro. Like I really like Django Bay, and I'll put that out there, but not over this trip on this ground, on this track. I thought he looked like he wanted further in the cigars. I agree with what T&Cs said, and that Nico gave Ben Jones too much rope and didn't press at the right time. But all he was doing at Sandown was coming back at the line. He's a really accurate jumper. I'm not sure he's going to be slick enough on this ground. If the ground dries out, it would still be no surprise if he dodges this and they go to the Browns. It really wouldn't, because I do think he's a stair in the making, as is Madgeburgh. He's 8-15 with SBK. It's the price that you would be desperate to take on, because I agree with TC. The ground is arguably a bit too lively. He doesn't jump like a slick 2-miler. For all that, he was much better on his first start when he put away Tully Hill and Asian Master, although they've both been beaten since. He was a little bit careful last time at Leopardstown, but I think in some ways that was just Mark Walsh making sure he got round, because that's all he had to do. And you could argue that's all he's going to have to do here. It's really hard to oppose him, so he's probably one that you would. And I don't like these short-priced accas throughout the week. I just think it's a nonsense. But if you're the sort of person that does that, he's going to be in them, isn't he? Django Bay, I just don't like the drying ground. Firefox is just utterly tripless at this grade. He's not quick enough over this trip. He doesn't stay well enough over intermediate trips. Low de Surds, it's been really interesting. He is a slick jumper and he is a quick jumper. So, I mean, I just wonder whether Harry Scout would be brave enough just to absolutely sit bang alongside Mark Walsh and just see if he could get Madgeburgh in a bit of bother with better jumping, but I suspect he won't. And I just didn't like his prep last time. They went to the Kingmaker for a prep race, and I think they got it really wrong. He went there undercooked and was absolutely out on his feet as Rubo closed him down. Now, Rubo's no bad horse. I don't mind the form line. I just really dislike how he was absolutely shattered at the end, and I can't think that was in any way the idea going there. So it's a race I will probably not have too much of an interest in, but Touch Me Not is a really, really good jumper. He was excellent in Ireland, came over for the Henry VIII, and Jordan Gainford just didn't make enough use of his jumping. Absolutely walked through one down the back. He's got 9 lengths to find in Madgeburgh, which I don't think he can find, but he's only got 4 lengths to find from the Henry VIII at Sandown with Load of Sudden. I think he can turn that round with a more forceful ride, hopefully from Jack Kennedy, on better ground. He's a really good jumper, 12-1 each way. And I think I'd play that now because I'm not sure there's going to be 8 runners on the day. So you might get 3 places about a race that only has 7 in it.
Yeah, you're right. The likes of Ballyburn is still in the betting. We know that he's not going to be in here. Touch Me Not, you touched on this. Pardon the pun. Jack Kennedy, an important development over the last week or so that he will be back for the Cheltenham Festival. He's blowing away the cobwebs this week in Ireland. But he is made of something else. The fact that he's come back from another leg break so quickly for a meeting like this, and he's going to be very valuable for Gordon Elliott this week. So Touch Me Not in this race where I'm happy to take on this favourite, Majbra. He's a short enough price. He's done nothing wrong, but potentially there are others that could just upset favourite backers in the Arkle Chase. Okay, thanks to TC and to Ross. Give us something to think about there. We're going to move on next to the Mares' Hurdle, a race where there's been a slight uncertainty, really, where some of the key figures are going to go, as we know 2 very high-profile mares in the shape of Lossiemouth and Brighter Days Ahead had their options here, but Brighter Days Ahead and Lossiemouth still in the confirmations, but Brighter Days Ahead's definitely going to the Champion Hurdle. Lossiemouth, whether she will, she won't. Feels like they're kind of erring on the side of the Champion Hurdle, Ross, from what we can tell. So you've got to take her out of this, and this becomes a bit more of an open race.
Yeah, it does sound like they're going to go Champion Hurdle. But then beware of the Tour and the Ryanair and the Gold Cup. And I just wonder when it comes down to it, when Rich Ritchie is given that piece of paper where they're all running and he looks to see where his winner's coming from and it's hard to find, might be awful tempting just to throw her in here. Often drying ground, off the back of a fall last time, they'd have their excuses ready made, wouldn't they? But let's approach it as if they're not running and we get a really good Champion Hurdle. This is a race I'm not gonna bet yet. I'll have an opinion now. I think this is a race where you should be able to find a winner closer to the day because it will open up and we'll have a clear idea with who Paul Townend rides, who Willie Mullin runs. Jade de Grugy, she's the 5-2 favourite if you take Lossiemouth out. But she was beaten into 4th last year in the Mares' Novice. Okay, I think Paul Townend and Jack Kennedy on Jade de Grugy and Bright Days Ahead probably man-marked each other and completely forgot Lorcan Williams, who sluiced home on Golden Ace. But she's yet to prove herself on a sounder surface. She was good on a return in the Quevega, but that was only 19 days ago. That, for me, is the slight concern. A mare turning around 19 days after a seasonal return. So I want to take her on, I think. Golden Ace is a real conundrum. I loved her last year. She was a big price winner in the Mares' Novice for me. I've been bitterly disappointed with what she's done this year. Having gone on to win a listed Mares contest at Cheltenham over 2 mile 4 last year on good ground, she's then looked this year like she doesn't stay. 2 mile 4 in the Ascot Hurdle, 2 mile 4 in the Railkill. Now, they were good races. It was on soft ground. But then she dropped back to the Kingwell and she looked like she was desperate for further because she was hard at it from a long way. You have to like how she battled to get up to beat Burdett Road, but it was hardly that inspiring. I just don't quite know what to make of her. I wonder if there's a little issue with her wind or something, that she's just not quite seeing it out. So I think I want to overlook her. Joyeuse, who won the William Hill Schweppes Betfair Hurdle, has been supplemented this morning. She's quite interesting, but she won that off 123. She's gone up £15, so that rating puts her in the mix. She's got quite good course form. She was second behind Woodoo of Gordon Elliott's earlier in the season on good soft ground. That wasn't a great Nico ride. He sort of got himself in a bit of trouble, gave the winner too much rope. But the one I'm coming down on that I like at the moment is July Flower for Henry de Bromhead. Only had 1 start for Henry. Had really good form over 3 miles in France, behind the likes of Losange Bleu, who's a really good stayer. She ran for Henry de Bromhead, beat Carla Conti 4 lengths, getting £5. That is important. And Jatara, 16 lengths, getting £3. But on good to yielding ground, which she wouldn't have faced before in France. And she was pretty strong at the death on her first start. Henry de Bromhead will train these mares to come through into the spring. The lively drying ground is the concern. And she does have a stayers hurdle entry. But if she's in touch coming down the hill, nothing will come home stronger. She's 11-2. I think she'll love the track. The one concern is Henry de Bromhead is 6% winners to runners for the last 2 weeks. And that's an improvement on what's been happening through January. But I've got a feeling, if you go back, we said this last year and the year before, and he always finds winners at Cheltenham. So it's not perhaps unduly worrying, but you would like to see him perhaps get a few winners this week. So July Flower at the moment, but it's a race that I think hopefully on the daily pods I'll have a much firmer opinion on.
Okay, July Flower, she's very interesting, isn't she? You touched on the fact that she spent a good period of time in France. She was actually with Henry de Bromhead for one run prior to that in 2023. She actually ran in the Mayor's Bumper at Aintree, so he obviously thought quite highly of her. And then he went and spent, Tom, 350,000 to bring her back into the yard. And I watched an interview where he said he bought her with the idea to win this race. So that was, I'd imagine, very satisfying for the team to see her win at Leopardstown, and they've obviously saved her for this. She was kind of, I don't know if she was helped or prevented to see her best, the fact that the last hurdle was omitted and she had to race on the flat for the closing stages, but she's clearly got a huge amount of ability.
Yeah, that's an interesting point regarding the final hurdle. I don't actually think she was helped or hindered by it. She's an amazing jumper, impeccable, but also she's a strong stayer, so it didn't really... it wouldn't have changed the result regardless. I still think she'd have won if there was the hurdle there, probably by the same distance or so. I'm very much in the same kind of band as Ross here with July Flower. I just think she's solid. She's improving. She ticks a lot of boxes. Brighter Days Ahead would have obviously been the pick if she was in here. Lossiemouth, even if she runs in this race, I will play July Flower. I don't really trust Lossiemouth anymore. Look, she's very good, but I didn't think she was at her best behind Constitution Hill at Kempton, and then she took an absolute perler in Ireland last time, and we know what I think about horses that take big falls and then come back. Yeah, she's just a no bet for me. I think July Flower's a decent price in a race where most of the others are pretty unappealing. Joyeuse is appealing, the supplementary entry, but I just kind of prefer the profile of July Flower, and hopefully she can travel, as Ross says, and at the bottom of the hill going up towards the line, she is going to be finishing with a plum. I quite like her in the spot.
Okay, so we've got two agreed opinions already coming into the end of our, the first three races of day one with Copec de Board and July Flower, who we think that Henry de Bromhead has properly mapped out this race with this horse in a kind of division that he does do very well with indeed. So July Flower for both TC and Ross. Let's move on to the big one on day one. It is the Champion Hurdle. It's at 4:00, which is a slightly later time. I think they've reshuffled the times a little bit this year. So don't miss this grade one because it sees the return of the former champion Constitution Hill, who has kept up his unbeaten record since his comeback this season. We've also seen him do a racecourse gallop at Kempton, where Nicky Henderson was the most confident I've seen him in a long time about the chances and the well-being of Constitution Hill. He doesn't seem too fazed by the fact that Brighter Days Ahead is going to be turning up here for Gordon Elliott and Jack Kennedy, who's already booked back on. I'd imagine this is the horse that he's been desperate to get back for. As we discussed, Lossiemouth is still a maybe. State Man, last year's winner, is looking very likely to be in here, as well as a good few other entries. But it's really those four that set an extremely high standard. TC, are there any limitations to Constitution Hill? Or, potentially better question, are there strengths of others, if any, that might make you slightly concerned about Constitution Hill and his ability to show himself off as brilliantly and as sort of unflappable as he has been every time he's been at Cheltenham?
No. It's absolutely ludicrous. I'm seeing people on social media trying to take him on. Have you not? It seems like every preview podcast, people are going, "Oh, Brighter Days Ahead." I should be doing an Irish accent here because it is usually the Irish that do it. Brighter Days Ahead is going to be beating Constitution Hill. Do we realise that Constitution Hill is the best jump horse of this era? That he's 10 from 10. That he's come back from a big injury and he's performed to a very high level. Okay, maybe his RPRs are £10 below his best. Who cares? Last time he wasn't forced to really stretch out up the home straight. He made a mess of the final hurdle. That, I think, is the only time I've ever seen him make a mess of a hurdle for a start. Prior to that, he looked very good when beating Lossiemouth. And people still think Lossiemouth has the ability that she showed in the past. Now, I don't personally, but I thought he was very good, and despite not being 100% fit. With the workout on social media at Kempton, it was like everyone had to either have a really strong good opinion of it or a really strong negative. There was nothing in the middle. It was absolutely crazy. I was off social media that day for a reason. It was just, This horse, Constitution Hill, is somehow dividing the public despite doing absolutely nothing wrong. He is the best jumps horse we've seen for a long time. He wins this race.
Fighting talk, and not even fighting talk. I think very much well judged and intelligent talk from TC, because he has done nothing wrong. Why is everyone so desperate to get this horse beat? And I'd like to throw one stat, and I'm not going to do too much pedigree chat because I know it's not to everyone's taste, but Capguard, the sire of Brighter Days Ahead, really weakens her chances even more. He's had just 2 winners from 53 starters, which, even though the stallion is exceptional, he just doesn't seem to find them at Cheltenham. And she's been beaten at this track, which is already emphasises the fact that Capguard does have his limitations. A Plus Tard is the only horse that has won for him, and he was an out-and-out stayer. And my opinion is that she is not a 2-miler. Am I right or am I wrong, Ross?
You are absolutely, both of you, bang on the money. I mean, I dip in and out of the previews, and largely just to give myself a chuckle at the need for people to have contrary opinions for whatever reason. I just don't understand it. He was really good in the Christmas hurdle, and it seems to have passed everyone by that he was lame with a bruise before that. So he went into there massively undercooked. I've got no doubt about that whatsoever. The way you should view that race, in my opinion, is what he did from turning in to going down to the last. He absolutely danced away from them and then got tired, lossy mouth. You could say closed on him, but I don't think she did, actually, if you look at it properly. I then loved what he did in the Unibet because he just looked so fresh and so arrogant and back to his absolute best. The last hurdle was completely down to Nico, and it was because in the champion hurdle when he won it, Constitution Hill came up. Nico thought they were going to go in and pop. They just switched roles this time. So hold your breath down to the last. And I think the fact they went to Kempton, doesn't matter what he did at Kempton. What matters is that Nicky Henderson, who took, and we have to remember, he took Constitution Hill and the damage last year to his string so personally. It was very obvious to see he wears his heart on his sleeve. The fact that he was prepared to roll up in front of the cameras at Kempton and do that shows that this horse must be absolutely bouncing at home. There's no doubt about that. Brighter Days Ahead was really impressive at Leopardstown, but State Man didn't turn up. She beat a bunch of handicappers. King of Kingsfield gave her a lead. The issue is King of Kingsfield's not going to give her a lead as far into this, because King of Kingsfield will take one look at the hill down the back at Cheltenham, spit the dummy. She could be well stuck in front coming down the hill, which she won't want to be. She'll end up doing the donkey work for Constitution Hill. And the other thing to point out is, yes, she was beaten last year. Yes, perhaps Jack Henley wasn't at his best, but she still should have won that if she's got aspirations to be in a champion hurdle mare. And she's got to quicken down the hill. At Leopardstown, you go down the hill very early on, and then you climb from a long way out. She's got to quicken down the fairly sharp bend down the hill at Cheltenham on the old course. I'm not sure she can do that. I don't think this is her track. Constitution Hill will beat her, and I would bet Lossy Mouth to beat Brighter Days Ahead in a match. I take on board what TC says, and I agree. It was a nasty fall last time. If they run her here, they clearly think she's over it. She likes this track. She'll come up the hill strong. I think she's got more pace in it finished than Brighter Days Ahead, so I back her to finish in front of Brighter Days Ahead, but Constitution Hill wins it. He's a short price now. Hopefully you paid attention to me when I put him up before the fighting fifth, because there was so much nonsense spoken. He was 5-2 at that point, but if you're looking to back a winner, he's the one.
Okay, can I ask something that hasn't been prepped for potentially, but quickly, Ross, your 1, 2, 3, 4 for the champion hurdle?
4 going to get home. Constitution Hill beats Lossy Mouth, and probably beats Brighter Days Ahead. I can't think of anything that's going to be ridden really cold that's going to come and get them.
Okay, we'll give you the first 3. And TC, opinions?
Constitution Hill, Brighter Days Ahead, Lossy Mouth, Winter Fog.
Interesting. Okay, so nowhere to be seen for poor old State Man, who probably was probably a bit flattered last year with a very, very weak version of the champion hurdle, which this one certainly isn't. So one for the ages. Don't forget to tune in to the champion hurdle at 4 o'clock at sea, where any doubters can be silenced. This is very much the Constitution Hill fan club on the SBK podcast. Okay, we've gone through the major races. We're going to give Ross and TC their opportunity just to any selections from the handicaps at this stage. Obviously, we do have the daily podcast, so a reminder to get those saved, and there will be probably a little bit more knowledge as to who is definitely going to be turning up. But I'll start with you, TC, just quickly. Anything from potentially the now renamed Halgarten and Novum Wines Juvenile Handicap Hurdle, then known as the Fred Winter?
Yeah, I'm glad you said it. I thought it was the Boodles. Who knows? Yes, just one in this other category. As you say, the daily podcast, I'll be providing a pick for every race. But as we go through the days, just one or two maybe in the same race. But on day one, I like Willie Duhuel in the Boodles, Fred Winter, whatever it's now called. I know he has to carry top weight in this contest, but I'm all for betting a horse that most punters have given up on after a couple of runs. And that seems the case with this guy. Look, wasn't he a short price for the Supreme or something but before the start of the season? Everyone just seems to have given up on him. Okay, he has been a little bit disappointing. He was beaten by Naturally Nimble, who reopposes, I think, in this contest. That was on debut for Willie Mullins at 1-4, but I didn't think he did anything wrong in that race. I thought he travelled nicely, just maybe wasn't 100% fit in the latter part of the race, and it showed when Naturally Nimble came on by. Last two starts back, he was too keen at Leopardstown. I just think this horse is starting to put things together. He finished pretty well last time behind Hello Neighbour, and if he can repeat that effort in this much lesser race off top weight, I think he'll go close. A mark of 140 is probably not too bad, I don't think, for this horse, considering Connections believed he was capable of being one of the best novices around at the start of the year. He's around 8-1, I think, which is a very fair price.
Yeah, you're spot on. We're very quick to give up on horses, but there's so many hyped up horses coming from the Willie Mullins yard, and sometimes a little bit unfairly, but they feel like he's got the ability to show up in a race like this. Okay, for Ross, what do you like outside of the obvious ones? Maybe some good old-fashioned handicappers and some Ross specials at double-figure prices, please.
Well, we'll try. First of all, Naturally Nimble's not been kept in for the declaration stage, so TC's pick hasn't got to beat him. In the Ultima, Happy Go Lucky. Now, the Ultima normally goes to progressive novice. Because of the change of the rules, there's not going to be many in there because they need this extra run. I think trainers need to take notice of that and maybe keep their horse in a bit longer and get a chase run into them before they go out to the field. But that's another story. Happy Go Lucky was second off a mark of 140 in 2021. That is a long time ago, I know. He's an 11-year-old. He's only had 5 runs since. He's clearly had issues. Has moved from Kim Bailey to Mal Rowley. But I thought he shaped really well in January over 2 mile 4. Went with some zest, just got tired over a trip that's far too short for him off a 683-day break. He's by Jeremy, who I think you'll say has got a good Cheltenham record. He's 26-1 in a changing sort of style of race. I'd be interested in him. I'd already put up Search for Glory on the Tuesday podcast. He was 33-1. He's now 22-1. He had really good form winning a beginner's chase at Galway. And beat Summer Jess by 8 lengths. Summer Jess is a decent horse. He then went and was the best horse in the Florida Pearl behind Stella Story. Just for whatever reason, didn't get the best ride over the final 2 fences. Run over shorter trips since, 4 lengths behind Impera Pass. I thought was decent form in the 4 Novices. He was 33-1. He's now 22-1. He's one of the few progressive, potentially top-class novices in this. I think he's an outstanding price. In the Fred Winter, I'm going to go with a Willie Mullins horse, but it's Mercia off a mark of 136. That's £3 Irish tax. She's 133 in Ireland. She looked short of fitness, I thought, on her first start when she was beaten and weakened drastically. But she was second to Bacchanalian on a latest start, finishing really strongly on soft ground. He's since gone to win a grade 2 on heavy ground. He likes that ground. She's by Dr. Dino. She should like this drier ground. Looks pacey to me. 12-1 I thought was good about her. Haiti Couleurs in the National Hunt Chase off a mark of 135. Really good Cheltenham form, really good aim form. Jumps brilliantly. Had a prep off this mark of 135 over hurdles. Finished third, ran really well. The fact he's such a good jumper and the National Hunt Chase has so many fences in it would suggest that mark of 135 is really workable. Transmission would be interesting, but I hope he goes to the Kim Muir. He'd be one of my handicap picks of the week if he does. And I just thought Dufflecoat and Kintara might also be interested in that. Dufflecoat looks like he's been plotted for this. He was second in the Galway off a mark of 140. Looks like he's not really tried all that hard in recent starts. I think he'll stay. And Kintara was second in the Pertemps off 131. Hasn't jumped well in 2 chase starts this season, but had a chase start earlier in his career. Slower pace might help, particularly if Charlie Deutsch got on board.
Okay, there's plenty there. I'm going to stop you quickly on her TT Couleur, because this is the horse that I put up as an anti-post selection back in one of our January podcasts, and he's going to be my nap for this day. Question about the fact that Resplendent Grey for Ollie Murphy is in there, so likely that they're not going to get Sean Bowen. Will that worry you with a horse like this? It's got to know him so well and it's really brought out the best in him. And I sort of wonder where they'll go looking. Will Ben Jones be available? Is that something that would concern you?
Yeah, Ben Jones on him would concern me. Yeah, over 3 mile 6 round or 3 mile 4 round Cheltenham definitely would. I just wouldn't be at all surprised. Ollie Murphy and Sean Bowen look to have a really good relationship. I don't think Resplendent Grey has got much of a chance in this. Wouldn't surprise me if he was a let off to ride this horse. You make a good point, and it passed me by. That might be a bit of a concern, yeah, who they get, but they'll get a good jockey. Rebecca Curtis has got really good Irish connections as well. Wouldn't just be surprised if a good Irish jockey got on.
Yeah, I just think something to keep in mind on. Ben Jones will certainly be on Pit Rock. I heard him say something about that being one of the best chances of the week. So just something to keep abreast of. Just a reminder, Happy Go Lucky in the Ultima at 26-1 currently for Ross. We've got Mercia and the Fred Winter at 12-1, and Hetiti Couleur in that National Hunt Chase, now a new iteration. It's been a redeveloped and around about 5-1. He will be my nap for this day, and just as essentially similar to what Ross has said here, that sort of extra race just in between over hurdles was perfectly fine. It was on soft ground. They'd happily like the ground just to dry up a little bit, but he really is a horse I've followed all season, and they've just kept him going throughout the season, kicking along. He's really improved for chasing. The trip looks ideal, and let's just see what happens from a jockey booking perspective. But that's for the handicap chase. And then got one for the Ultima for you. I'm going to select Henry's Friend, who I think has been plotted out for this by Ben Pauling. The Ultima has been, as we know, kind of the British trained horses over the years. Slightly different to Ross's selection in that he probably doesn't have as much experience as the others, but I just love his racing style. He should really race up in the vanguard. His good jumping and his style should suit. He's got the speed to keep up a good pace throughout. He normally wears cheap pieces, which is a positive, as I found a stat that 9 out of the last 13 winners have worn headgear in this race. Whether you like that kind of thing or not, it's just something that I wanted to add to my my shout about Henry's Friend. He just has that sweet spot, I believe, in his rating, and I think that. Considering that they've laid him out for this, we haven't seen him since December. They want to be keeping him sweet. So that's Henry's Friend as my next best. So looking forward to Tuesday, and I've written down with our free £2 multiple from SBK and on offer, considering Ross and I have agreed on Hetiti Couleur. There's been agreement about July Flower, agreement about Copet de Board, and very much agreement about Constitution Hill. I don't think that's a bad way to begin the festival. So very much looking forward to day 1. We're going to move on to day 2. The Wednesday will be another championship race with the Champion Chase, which we'll focus on. But before that, let's kick off with the Turners, a race where we're going to see we hope some more excellent horses from both sides of the sea, a lot of talking horses, and this Turners Novices Hurdle over 2 mile 5 furlong. Again, a race with the novice hurdlers, they've still got all the options. So I suppose we might get to the point where horses are decided to deflect depending on ground. There's been a bit of uncertainty about final demand for Willie Mullins. His price is slightly contracted, going to come in, come out a little bit. So we aren't certain as to where he's going to show up. Now, the New Lion is the horse that Dan Skelton has got a huge amount of faith in. We've seen what he's done on these shores, but I suppose, Ross, I'll come to you first. Is he going to have to improve a lot? Say, for example, we do have the likes of final demand in here. Will he have to improve a huge amount to be challenging or even giving final demand something to really think about?
Yeah, probably. But I think you'd have to say that final demand might have to up his game as well to win this. That they have to step on through the season. Final demand was really good at Limerick and then was awesome at Leopardstown. Just tanked for the race, did everything right. beat Wingman by 12 lengths, drawing away. It looked really easy. He reminds me an awful lot of Denman. He's just a relentless galloper. He looks like quite a heavy top horse, and that's why I'll be against him. I've got no doubt that of these, in time, he will be the best of these. He'll be rated 170 plus over fences, I'm sure of it. But just this test on this day, drying ground, big heavy topped horse coming down that hill and having to quicken on the old course, just not sure it's right for him. I think he'll run here. I know that I think the price changed because Brian Drew, the owner, was on a podcast and said that he was 70-30 to come here. Brian Drew is quite a new owner to Willie Mullins' yard, and with respect to him, I think he might be a little bit misguided as to how valuable his opinion is in the placing of horses. His horse will run where Mr. Mullins tells him it's running.
I will vouch for that.
And I don't think Mullins likes this race at all. The horse you put up a couple of years ago, was it the Nice Guy? He's not been seen since. Dear old Monkfish never went on after winning this. I think he has a view that this race is a grueler and is not for top class horses. I'll be really surprised if Final Demand doesn't come here. But I will take him on with the New Lion. For all that I love Final Demand, he was visually impressive on 2 of his 3 runs. He beat Belliano at Chepstow. That horse has won twice since. He's going to the EBF final at Sandown at the weekend and will probably have quite a chance. And he won the Challow. Now, I think the Challow record is 0 from 20 coming on to this race, so that's not great. But when have you ever seen a Challow winner win like he did, which was to go around on the bridle, come out again, quicken again, and win it very, very easily. Now, you can poke holes in the form. Regent Stroll wasn't much good afterwards, neither was Bill Joyce. Wendigo, I think, ran a really good race to win next time out, all in an egg and spoon race. I think he's a decent horse in his own right. The New Lion was just a different class to them, quickened up smartly. I can see him lobbing round here. And we have to bear in mind that although it's over further, the turners generally can be a bit more of a speed test. When you think back, Forheen ran in this, he was the quicker horse than Vateur. Going all the way back, Isterbrack won this before going on to win his champion hurdle. So it is a horse that needs a bit of speed. I think the New Lion has got that. And again, I've mentioned it a number of times, JP and his team have done some of the work for you here. They've gone out and bought him. They've not just said he looks nice and thrown some money. They'll have done a bit of due diligence, had a proper good look. And it's one of the first horses that Dan Skelton's got for JP. He's not going to want to see him the wrong way because he's an ambitious young trainer who would want more horses in the green and gold. So the New Lion for me, the Yellow Clay, I hope he goes to the Albert Bartlett because I've backed him anti-post for that. I don't need to be quick enough on this ground anyway. Potter's Charm's been badly campaigned. They bottomed him again, similar to the horse I mentioned on the Tuesday, Lodesud. They thought they could pick up a cheap grade 2. They paid the price. They got beaten. The horse had a really hard race. He's been a little bit over-raced, perhaps, for a novice profile going into Cheltenham, which perhaps shouldn't be dismissed because at least we got to see him run, but I think they probably harmed their chances. The one at a big price, 6 Mile Bridge, the horse that beat Potter's Charm at Cheltenham, he actually has now lost that race because he tested positive for a drug not coming out of his system in time. But I really like what he's done through his season. He's developed with every run. He got beaten at Stratford, but that turned into a dash on a sharp track. Maybe he wants slightly softer ground, and watch him through the prelims because he got very bowled up in the bumper last year. So he's 20-1 again. He'd be one that if he gets down to the start and looks organised, I'll have a little bit on each way.
Okay, I saw TC nodding away about the Yellow Clay and his direction potentially. But before we get to TC, quick one on the New Lion. Couldn't agree more, especially the speed element. He has got a lot of stamina in his pedigree. He's the family of El Presente, and it goes all the way back to Diamond Boy, who's the sire of Blonde Presse. So there is stamina there in abundance. But Dan Skelton has spoken about the speed he has and can actually see them going back in trip than stepping up ultimately. He's got so much cruising speed, and the times have shown that. His final furlong on the Challow was a time of 14.44 seconds, which was quicker than the previous one at 14.56. So if you're interested in times, it is quite unusual to still be quickening at the line in a Challow where they are on quite normally pretty soft ground, and they've gone quite hard. So the New Lion seems just to have so much in his locker, whereas let's see what the others might. TC, if the Yellow Clay does turn up in here, are you still going to be supporting him, or will you be dusting off those anti-post betting slips and reminding yourself why we don't get too involved with novices early on in the year?
Well, he's literally my only Cheltenham Man's Post bet, and I placed it last March after the champion bumper for the Albert Bartlett. So I pray that he runs in the Albert Bartlett. I got 33-1. That would be a cracking bet if he lines up there. And to be honest, Gordon, if you're watching, you've got to go there because he's the best staying novice. Why wouldn't you go to the Albert Bartlett? Anyway, if he rocks up in this race, I will still have a little bit on the yellow clay, purely from a loyalty perspective. Now, loyalty in punting equals failure. Don't be loyal. That is my golden rule. Every punter's loyal that isn't a pro. They watch and go, oh, I bet that horse before, so I'm going to bet that horse again. Don't do it. It's the worst thing to do. However, I am going to do a little bit of loyalty here with the yellow clay, just because I think he is the best staying novice. What I will say, though, if he doesn't line up in this and does go to the Albert Bartlett, then obviously I don't have a pick here. I think the New Lion is the horse to beat. He should be favourite. Even if Final Demand's in the race, I would probably play Dan's horse. But when we do the daily podcast, we'll know exactly who's going to line up and we can talk through this again.
Okay, fine. We'll be waiting as those confirmations come through, or they might just make it really painful and wait up into declaration time for Wednesday, which will be Monday. So we'll be praying for you, TC. That's a big old time to wait, and 33-1 for the Albert Bartlett with the yellow clay. If not, there's support behind the New Lion, who's currently 7-4. Right, let's move on to the Brown Advisory. Novices Chase takes place at 2:00, and this is the race where we have Ballyburn, emphatic winner of the Turners this time last year. The only time he's been beaten has been by the great Sir Gino, where he's basically running over the wrong trip. Willie Mullins also has Dancing City, Gordon Elliott has better days ahead. Croke Park as well, he potentially might not be going here. It's an Irish raid in this race. Jinko Blue and Hititi Kler, I mean, we're unlikely to see them. But there seems to be a bit of value if you are a fan of Ballyburn, I would say, TC. 13-8 about a horse who seemingly hasn't done a huge amount wrong. Seems like a good price to me.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this short and sweet because I know Ross wants to go into some mechanics about Ballyburn. He's just the best horse in the race. There's no question about that, full stop. He will be my nap on Wednesday, my best bet on Wednesday. He bumped into a beast in Sergino earlier this season, subsequently came out and romped home at Leopardstown in a near career best effort. You could argue it was a career best, but on figures it was a near career best effort. He should improve for the extra distance. He's a better horse than Dancing City and Elliott's Bunch. Just wins, doesn't he?
Look, Ballyburn, he's a horse that I think it's probably been a bit unfair on him that everyone's picking at his holes and saying why did he run at Kempton, and he's clearly not very good at jumping a fence, and this and that and this and that, and it's a bit like the Constitution Hill conversation we had earlier, where everyone seems to want to take him on, but Ross, it seems also that everyone's got all these figures and these facts to back this up as well. What do you say to all of this?
Well, I mean, TC's obviously not got the memo. If you're on a preview pod, you've got to say that Ballyburn doesn't jump well enough. It's the law. I have never, and Alex, get the bleep machine ready. I've never heard such utter tripe spoken about a horse in all of my life. It's nonsensical to me. He jumped a bit big and careful at Punchestown, and everyone latched onto the fact that Ruby Walsh said, "Oh, he doesn't jump much like a 2-miler to me." No, he doesn't. He won his hurdle race over 2 mile 5. He's not a 2-miler. Then they went to Kempton to try against Sergino. Why did they run him over 2 miles? Because Willie Mullins likes to keep his horses at the very minimum of trip for as long as possible. And he got absolutely minced by an exceptional novice. But his jumping there, other than jumping out to his left a little bit, was, and I've watched it back, exceptional. He shortened up and danced when he needed to. He was scopy at the ditch when he needed to be. The only fence he made a mistake at was when he was absolutely run off his feet going down to the last, and he banked the last. Even then, he was terribly organised about what he was doing. He was pretty quick across the top of it. Paul Tannen got unbounced on the top, got back in the saddle. No dramas done. Went to Leopardstown, won at the Dublin Race Special over 2 miles 6, jumped like an old hand. He was a little bit keen, but he's getting better with every run. He's got to stay 3 furlongs further against a bunch of old plodders. Dancing City would be in the old National Hunt Chase. Stella Story would be in the old National Hunt Chase. Django Bay is the only one that's interesting if he does the dirty on TC and comes here instead. 20-1, he's the second classiest horse in the field. You back him each way. But 7-4 about Ballyburn, provided he settles, and If he doesn't, I'll take my medicine. He's a really good jumper for a 3-mile chaser. He's very intelligent with what he's doing. He's getting better. 7-4 is an outstanding price. He's my nap of the day.
Right. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, everyone. Those that are questioning his jumping, and there is so much that has been said about it. Look, Cheltenham is going to be the test which will really find them out. And I suppose novice chasers, we've seen shockers, really, haven't we? And we feel like do you feel, Ross, that Ballyburn might be seen at his best at Cheltenham when they go that little bit quicker, when he's got the ability just to show off a little bit more at a track that seemingly suits him as well? And that might just be what's been letting him down. The optimums haven't been there for him, whereas Cheltenham could bring out the best of him on the old course.
Yeah, and people seem to think that, I mean, I think Sir Gino has really messed it up for every novice, because he looked like such a natural from day one that people think that that's how novices jump, and they don't. They learn. I mean, my eventing background, we teach them to jump ditches and logs and water, but the complexity of it and the ability with which we expect to do it improves as they get up in age. I mean, to put it into context, we start them as 5-year-olds. We expect to hit their peak as 10, 11-year-olds. So they get 6 years practicing it. Ballyburn's had 3 runs. He's improved with every run. If he'd have regressed, absolutely, but he hasn't. He's at least stayed par, if not improved. It is, again, people wanting to fire sound bites out.
Yeah, and look, probably trying to find some sort of windy option as an alternative, but there really isn't a huge amount more of this. I did think Croke Park had been massively overlooked, but from what I can read and hear, he's not coming here. He's looking like he's going to be weighted with for Aintree. So Ballyburn for TC and for Ross as we move on to the Champion Chase at 4:00. John Bon. Dear John Bon, he's been a real friend of the podcast for a long time now. He deserves this, doesn't he? It's just his record at Cheltenham, which possibly is the concern. He's 2 from 4 here, but he has 1 at the track. But 9 grade 1s in total. And Ross, I'll come back to you because I know you're very much part of the John Bon fan club. He's the champion in all but name, really. So is it a matter of him showing what he can do and proving that he can put on a bit of a display at Cheltenham as well as all the other tracks he's done so far?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I'm not worried about him putting on a display. Just get home in front is all I ask. Yeah, he does deserve it. You don't get what you deserve in life, and certainly not in racing. So that's not going to be good enough. He's going to have to go and do it. But I do think his Cheltenham record has been slightly over-talked. He got beaten by Constitution Hill. He got beaten by Al Fabiolo when I think they got their tactics wrong. They didn't make enough use of his jumping. They let Al Fabiolo dictate. He's been pretty much perfect since then. He was really good at Ascot last time. Yes, the ground was a bit lively, for Enegamy maybe, but he jumped exceptionally. And I just love the partnership him and Nico have developed. I think he'd be very hard to beat. Watch him through the prelims. That might be the one danger, but he appears to be growing up. Each way angle's pretty hard to find. Again, I'm going to have an each way angle early because I think there'll be less than 8 runners here. Founder 50, not a horse I absolutely love, to be honest, but he beat Solness in the Fortria. Had a nasal discharge when was pulled up at Christmas at Leopardstown. The better the ground, the better his chance. I'd like to be ridden to pick up the pieces because he can't win this. He's entered in the Ryanair. That looks a slightly deeper race than this does even. So I think he'll come here. He'll pop around and hopefully pick up the pieces of those that perhaps try and take on John Bon for a win. He's 12-1 each way.
Yeah, okay, 12-1 each way, found 50. You touched on that. There are several here happy to take John Bon on, and very much an interesting type of horse that's sort of come out the woodwork. I don't think we would have expected Solness to be coming into this with off the back of 2 grade 1 victories, and even if you said that after his very far beaten by John Bon back in the Tingle Creek in December, they've really sort of brought out the best of him now in the running style and the way that he's able to go ahead and be very aggressive from the front. He was unlikely to get it his own way now with the presence of Matata, who we know is a bit of a nutter as well and will go forward too. TC, how do you read this race with those 2 in mind and how they might set this up? Will they make it, they'll mean that they will be going hard. They'll put everyone's jumping at the premium. And don't forget, this was the race where Big Fancy El Fabiolo fell early on last year. Anything could really happen in a race of this nature with the horses we have on offer.
I don't want to toot your horn, but that is the best link because it links perfectly into my selection and why I will be taking on John Bon. Now, I love John Bon. I think the grief he gets on social media sometimes is ridiculous. I think he's a fantastic horse. He's probably the best 2-mile chaser around. He will probably win this race, but he's run at Cheltenham 4 times. He's made mistakes in 3 of those races. If he's to lose this, it won't be down to ability. He is the most talented, but it could be down to making a mistake. And not only that, but this race, the market itself, has a lovely each-way look to it. John Bon around even money, 6-1 plus bar. Great each-way kind of betting race, especially if you think the favourite isn't an absolute stone-cold cert, which I don't because of the jumping. So I'm going to be with Marine Nationale. If they go hard up front, which is anticipated due to Solness and Matata, they're going to put a premium on the jumping, as you said. Perfect link. John Bon could make mistakes. Marine Nationale, I think, is jumping better now, and he's such a smooth traveller that if they go fast, that will really help him get into a rhythm and travel through the race when others may be struggling to go the gallop. Last time up, he was beaten by Solness, but he was given too much to do, obviously, in a race where Solness was given a cracking ride off the front and kind of stole it. He seems to be getting better and back to where he was when he was a good hurdler. Obviously, he's won at this track. He won the Supreme back in 2023. And I think at 6-1 each way, he's an each way bet to nothing. It's kind of each way thievery, if you want. Not only would he have a good winning chance, but also, and again, this doesn't come down to punting, but just as a headline, this would be a great story maker, wouldn't it? With obviously Michael O'Sullivan as well. So I'll be rooting for Marine Nationale. I think it's a great each way bet. And if John Bon does make a mistake or two, due to the fast gallop, they go early, he could be the one to capitalise.
Okay, yeah, I think it's well worth noting how this race could develop based on having the presence of these horses in here. So Marine Nationale, as you say, will have a lot of people's hearts etched to his chances here, formerly ridden by Michael O'Sullivan, who won on him in the Supreme only a couple of years ago, and they'll be going fighting for him in his memory. But the John Bon fans amongst us believe that he deserves to have a championship to his name, and it would be fantastic if Constitution Hill does win the champion hurdle the day before. These two horses that Nicky Henderson has really nurtured, they fought it out in the Supreme only themselves a few years ago as well, and to be at this date with championship glory in their grasp will be another fabulous training effort from the Master of Seven Barrows. Okay, that is a good look at the feature races on day 2. We've got a couple that we're agreeing on, but I want a couple more that we can add to our ACCA, our £2 multiple for the festival that SBK are offering. I'm not sure if it's going to come in the handicaps because we've got some crackers. We've got the likes of the Coral Cup, we've got the Grand Annual. There's plenty to choose from, and it probably will materialise a little bit. It will probably become a little bit easier as these races materialise with the declarations. But Ross, I'll come to you first. What do you like at this early stage from Wednesday?
So the Coral Cup, I think there's one that myself and TC agree on. Bo Zenith, he's off a mark of 137. He's crying out for a step up in trip, but his intended target is the Imperial Cup this Saturday. Now, of course, there is a bonus they go on and win, but it's a bit of a turnaround. He probably want a little bit of cut in the ground. I thought Jimmy DeSoy was really interesting off a mark of 146. He only got an extra pound of Irish tax, which was pretty low compared to, I think par for the hurdlers was about 3.5. Ran really well, went second in the Gallagher's to Ballyburn, and again at Aintree. He disappointed at Punchestown. That's the end of a long season. I can forgive that. He hasn't run since. He's got loads of form lines that suggest he is better than this mark of 146. He'd be interesting for Willie Mullins, particularly if Paul Townend rides. He only had one handicap ride last year, and he won. That was on Absurd. Nadawi for Gordon Elliott, also in the Coral Cup. He'd be one of my more interesting ones, and I'd be quite keen on him at 33-1. He's off 140, that's £4 higher. Finished really well in the Galway hurdle off a mark of 134. Split in Nürburgring and My Mate Mozzie. I think that's a really strong piece of form. Stayed on for third in the Fred Winter, so he's got course form. That was off 134. Stays well on the flat. He'll like drying ground. Joyu Masham, we've mentioned him loads. He's certainly got to be on a shortlist. He was given too much to do behind Altabelli Ascot last time. In the cross country, I've already put up old Mr. Coffee. I put him up after his first sighter round there earlier in the season. I think he's got an outstanding each-way chance. Be wonderful if he shed his maiden on at the Cheltenham Festival. Galvin is the class horse. I really like him. The ground needs to dry, and it was a bit concerning to see that it's heavy, soft in places on the cross-country course. It's going to need to dry, but it can dry quite quickly there. The drier it gets for him, the better he'll like it. But on soft ground, I'd be quite sweet on Chemical Energy, off a mark of 148. He got a 0 Irish tax. He's come down the handicap. He was second 2.5 lengths behind Guy de Manil in the National Hunt Chase at this track. Strong stayer. He had a canter round at Punchestown. That caught the eye. He'd be interesting in that. And then in the Grand Annual, I've already put up Harper's Brook. My phone hasn't stopped with the laughing emojis. He's an each-way price, though. He is unlike to win it, but he is way better than his mark of 137. And he could come there swinging in that. What he does up the hill is anybody's guess, including his own, I should think. But I quite like him. But I like My Mate Mozzie. Off 151, £1 Irish tax. Was a really easy winner of a course and distance novice 2 years ago. One off 146 Dublin Racing Festival. I think he's got a really good chance. 6-1 is a bit skinny, so probably wait to the day and hope that something's back and he drifts.
Okay, I'll recap that. Jimmy Desoy and Nadawi in the Coral, Chemical Energy in the cross country, My Mate Mozzie in the Grand Annual. So thanks for that. And there was also a word on Bo Zenith, which leads me on to TC. But before that, Ross didn't have a selection for the champion bumper, so I assume TC you've got something up your sleeve.
No, I do not. I will be waiting. It will be one of the 15 Willie Mullins entries that will probably run there. But no, I'm waiting. Wednesday, obviously the lowest in terms of crowd numbers every year at Cheltenham. And there is a reason for that. It's because the 4 other races that we haven't talked about, the grade ones, are very difficult. And I think most punters generally just want to kind of go another day. So yes, just one in the other section here until we know the declared horses. And that would be Bo Zenith if he turns up and he's declared in the Coral Cup. He is also number 34 currently in the entry list, 26 get in. So you would need a few to fall out, which is highly possible. Let's just pretend he is entered, and I'll tell you my reasons why I like him. Nicky Hennison won this in 2019 and 2020 with nice types. I've been waiting on Bo Zenith for basically all season since that first run when he finished third. Super eye-catching effort. Last time, maybe he was a little bit disappointing, but I still thought he was pretty noteworthy in his performance despite being beaten. And he's very well handicapped off a mark of 137, providing he produces his best. If you go back to his juvenile hurdling form, he looked like a potential future star. Long time off, 2 runs since. He's a type that I just think is very well handicapped. And whenever he turns up next, whether that be the Imperial Cup, whether that be the Coral Cup, I will bet him. So just the one in this section, might not even run.
Yeah, so maybe slight word of warning before I offer out what I believe could be quite a nice £2 multiple, this free £2 multiple that SBK are offering for the festival. We need 4 legs, so I think that we're all in agreement with the New Lion. Maybe a bit of Ballyburn, Bo Zenith, and then John Bon. Happy with that? There's a slight trepidation to TC's nod. I know that Marine Nationale is the selection, but I think considering we've been part of the John Bon fan club for some time, or you could take that out and pick something else that you've liked a case for. And I'm going to give a couple more cases for my Napa Next Best. We said all we need to say about the New Lion, so I'll give a couple for the handicaps. And I'm pleased to hear that Ross has actually mentioned this and said that Joy Machine should be high on the shortlist. He has got a very interesting Dan and Harry Skelton kind of profile. He was with Paul Nolan up to last December, where he was a 4-time winner over in Ireland, and he was tested over fences and hurdles. He was clearly highly thought of as he was a horse that came over to the Challow in 2020 and went off at 4-1. He actually pulled up, and then he also pulled up prior to that in the Champion Bumper. So they obviously thought he was a serious animal. He's been a bit hard to assess, but clearly a change of scenery may have been a bit of benefit to him since he's come over to England. He's ran a range of races this season, including behind Constitution Hill in the Unibet Hurdle, where according to Skelton, he was there to pick up prize money. And then 2 quick races back in handicaps. The most recent, as Ross was saying, was the second to Altabelli, where he stayed on very strongly from a long way back. He jumps nicely. He really caught my eye. He's just up £2 for that. So he's on a rating of 135. He needs a few to come out, but he would have got in last year. Even though Dan says he wants it to be very soft, I don't agree with that. TC, you've raised your hand.
Yes, I was with Joy Mashan last time, and I don't know if you guys have seen, but there is a stable tour with Dan Skelton on the Out the Races website. He said he might be the horse for the Saturday race at Utoxeter, 100 grand race. So I don't know whether he's going to run at Cheltenham or not.
I did see that as well, but I just think that's a good way of making sure that price doesn't change too much. That is the right cynic in me, and the fact that he wants it to be very soft. I'll try and do some digging, as I'm going to be doing a preview with him tomorrow at Warwick Racecourse, so I'll try and doorstop him on that. But Joy Machine is just a horse of note wherever he does go next. And then I'm going to put up Midnight It Is in the Grand Annual. I actually put him up in the Dan and Joe Moore couple of months ago, I think it was. He's a real improving horse of Gavin Cromwell, who I think is going to have a very big festival. He's that classic son of Midnight Legend, and that he's a late developing chaser who travels well through his races, and he has that extra staying ability to get him up the Cheltenham Hill late on in the Grand Annual. I think last time he just got going a little bit too late, so I think he's got a good chance. So those are my two handicap selections, and you can shop and change your ACCA, but I think we're very much on day 2 in the Supporters Club of the New Lion and Ballyburn. So that was day 2. So moving swiftly on to the latter stage of the week, we are now onto the new course, of course, at Cheltenham for Thursday, and be interesting to see if there's a bit of rain around in the mid part of next week. It's definitely not as sunny, but it will be fresh ground on the new course on the Thursday. So will be of note, and we're going to kick off with the Ryanair Mares Novices Hurdle at 120, a race which hasn't really got my juices flowing, really, and hasn't done for some time now. But there's probably an Irish horse, you'd imagine here, that is going to take a lot of beating from a betting perspective, quite rightly or wrongly. The likes of Maureen is right at the top of the betting at present, from Willie Mullins' yard, and closely related to Faheen. Hasn't done a huge amount wrong, I suppose. It's TC. I'll come to you first. It's a race where you've got to sort of profile horses, don't you? These sort of mares that probably have got the background. There's a range of them. The likes of 6.5, who was clearly a good horse on the flats, but I don't know if there's a bit of a muchness here. It doesn't feel like there's too much separating the Irish and the British, but there is on prices.
Yeah, it's very much a look towards the Irish. They've always got the best horses, so they're going to be now favourites. I understand why 6.5 tops the market. That makes perfect sense. She has good flat form, as you say, and she's looked pretty useful on her last 2 hurdling starts. So I can understand that. She warrants favouritism. Maureen, way too short on what she's achieved. It's very much Willie Mullins' hype. She is the best of our mares, is what he said in the stable tour, and therefore she's not going to be a price. If you go on RPRs, she's only run to 120. That's nowhere near good enough to get close. Now, she could be absolutely anything, but from a value perspective, she offers none of it. So I want to look somewhere else and look for an each-way alternative. And I'm going to go to a British horse, actually, in Diva Luna. There is a big caveat with her in a second, and I'll get to it, but she really fits trends in this race. 6-year-olds with at least 3 hurdling starts have won the last 5 editions of this race, and she hits that trend. Maureen doesn't, 6.5 doesn't. Quite a few others don't. So I like Diva Luna on the trends basis. She looked like she was going to be a future star when you go back to her bumper days last season, Aintree specifically, when she made virtually all the running. And this year, Ben Pauling has always said that she is top level. She's the best that they've trained, but she just hasn't really done it on the track. She's finished second twice in 2 races that she probably should have won, albeit first time up she was undercooked. Last time, there were no real excuses. The victory was fine, albeit not the most impressive. I'm just hoping that as the spring has come round, maybe she'll have transformed and been a better horse now. She jumps well, she travels well, she has natural early speed, so she should be in a good prominent spot. But she does need to perform to a better level. She's around 9-10 to 1 in a race that I think is pretty wide open, and therefore I'll play Diva Luna each way. Maybe she is slightly being overlooked on the basis that she lost at a short price.
Yeah, and I think that's no harm to her price. I mean, what would you put that down to? That getting beaten the last day. You know, obviously she had a penalty. The Ben Pauling, I should say Fergal O'Brien, sorry. Ben Pauling team never want to see a horse get beaten at 9-2 odd. Can you put your finger on it?
No, to be honest with you. But as I've already said in the podcast, I'm willing to overlook a horse one bad run. And this is the only bad run she's ever had in her career. I know she did lose at a short price first time up this year, but as I say, she was undercooked there and then came out and said that she was not ready. So I think last time up was obviously a below par performance. You do have to overlook it because on the basis of that form, she won't be winning here. But I know from reputation and from her bumper performances, she should be a lot better than that.
Yeah, look, this is a race that sort of screams to me, but punters looking for horses with those very sexy profiles, the unbeaten horses, the ones that look to be the next best, the next Annie Power, the next whatever it will be. And you go through the years, and Willie Mullins has farmed this in its early stages, but over the last 3 years, they've gone to the British Trainers, Golden Ace, who Wear It Well, Love Envoy, who had far from perfect records, but they were hardy kind of mares. So, Ross, with that in mind, do you agree with TC sentiments that this could be a bit of a lopsided betting match, considering the British horses are just bigger prices because they don't have these perfect profiles?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a race where you've got to have a swing at one. I mean, Willie won the first 5 editions of this. He hasn't won the last 4. They're just going to be over bet, and his 4 all tie in on form. I went into a deeper look on this on yesterday's podcast. If you want my real deep thoughts, have a look at that. But Maureen, you got to take on 6.5. I think you got to take on. Yes, she's got plenty of experience on the flap. She only had 1 run to her name. That said, I'm going to pick 2, one of which has only got 1 hurdle run to her name. But as Roberto 40000100 pointed out, I was panning one for having lack of experience and picking one with lack of experience. But the difference he seemed to miss was the massive difference in their price. Paul Nicholls has got 2 in it. He's got Jubilee Alpha, who's got plenty of experience. She looks pretty useful. He's also got Just a Rose. Now, and I went back and watched a point-to-point win. She showed loads of pace in winning the point-to-point, in that she was hanging on at the end because she didn't really stay the trip. But she beat Country Mile in the point-to-point. He's now rated 137. He's a pretty useful handicap hurdler. She was then again really impressive at Taunton in an egg and spoon race, but she won it by 35 lengths, and the manner she did it was really impressive. She jumped nicely, she settled well, and she absolutely scooted clear around Taunton. You probably couldn't get 2 more different tracks. So it's anyone's guess, but she's 16-1. Freddie Ginger will ride because Harry Coppin will definitely be on the other horse. I quite like Freddie on these bigger price ones because he'll give her a kick in the belly and see what she's got. And if she gets beat, she gets beat. I just think she might be a bit special. And then the other one, an even bigger price, 68-1 with SBK, is Charisma for Paul Nicholls. She's got French bumper form that ties her in with Caroline Bamboo, who's with Paul Nicholls, also owned by JP, much shorter in the betting. She was off 420 days when making her debut for Nikki at Windsor. Finished 3rd behind Jubilee Alpha. She was getting £8, so let's not get too excited about the form. But she was so free through that race. If I say she was too keen for a 1.5 miles, I'd be underestimating it. She absolutely ripped Nico's arms out. And I like the fact that she still kept going despite the fact she got tired. I think she'll like this better ground. I think she's a big price, obviously. She might as well come here. Where else are they going to go? If she lines up, I think she'll give them something to do. And 68-1 appeals to me each way.
Yeah, we like those. That's the biggest price being offered from one of our selections so far on the SBK Cheltenham preview pod. Charisma at 68-1, Just a Rose at 16-1, Diva Luna at 9-1. So prices to be had. And with that in mind, SBK are providing a 20% winnings boost on the first race every day of the festival. So this race will qualify. So get involved with that Ryanair Mes Novices Hurdle, where TC and Ross are both happy to take on the favourites in this. Okay, we're going to move on to the Ryanair Chase at 320. Where I suppose another big area of conversation in these previews is that we shouldn't have a Ryanair Chase. It's diluted the Gold Cup. It dilutes the Champion Chase. We've got the Melling. We don't need this. There's a lot of conversation about whether it is right to exist. I suppose it's not that. I don't really believe, in personal opinion, that it's the Ryanair as a racer's fault. It's more that everyone is running scared of Galopin Des Champs, and no one wants to give him a fair competition. And the likes of Fat to File is in this, in my opinion, wrongly. They'd rather just win a race than offer him the chance to race over a distance where we all believed he was going to be at his best this time last year. So seeing him over 2.5, we shall see, and I'll be interested to see what Ross and TC think if they're happy to take him on. But he is the favourite here. Il Francais is for Noel George and Amanda Zetterholm, the horse that was runner-up in the King George, and it looks from the last time I saw 90% chance that he will take his chances here as opposed to Champion Chase. And then we're not too sure. I asked Jane Mangan about Spillan's Tower. Apparently, they don't know. They don't know if he's going to be where he's running. They'll leave that to JP and his team to decide. We do know Protect Track will be in here off the back of his victory in this last year. So, look, it's going to be a fast and furious Ryanair with a lot of pace on. Interesting that we've got these types in here. What do you believe, TC? Do you think that this race is sort of means that we've lost the real challenge and competitiveness of the Gold Cup, or do you think that this is the right race that Factor File should have always run in?
No, I think it should be in the Gold Cup. I actually think he's the only horse that could throw it down to Galopin Des Champs in the race itself if they went there. But they're deciding not to, and the Ryanair is very winnable itself. Maybe they're just desperate to get a win on the board and they are opting for the easier option. Look, I've got him comfortably on top here. As I say, I've always had a high respect for this horse. I think he's very much Gold Cup caliber. It's just that Galopin Des Champs is virtually unbeatable at the moment. And, you know, for Factor File, he's probably not been ridden ideally either. Going into the Ryanair, I don't really see any other option other than playing the favourite. I think he's just way the horse to beat. 6-4-ish is a fair price. And considering he's already won at this track before, I don't really see the downside to Factor File.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting, TC, that, you know, you think that he should be in a Gold Cup. And I just hark back to the Corto Star days, Denman days, where Corto going for, you know, a considerable amount of wins, but everyone was still happy to go for it. Any Paul Nicholls with his stable stars were happy to clash. Willie Mullins doesn't want. Maybe it isn't Willie. Maybe it is JP. They don't want to clash. They don't want to see it happen. But I agree with you. I truly believe that Factor File is tailor-made for the Gold Cup trip, and it is a real disappointment. I don't think it should be that the Ryanair shouldn't be there. I just think it's quite unsportsmanlike, if I'm allowed to say that, and I do have a great respect for them all, that they don't want to give this a go, the race that they all said, every single connection to Willie Mullins said, this is a future Gold Cup horse. But they're not doing it, Ross. They're not doing it. Where do you land with this?
What are you two on? Have you watched his races this year? He doesn't stay an inch beyond 3 miles, and the Gold Cup, to remind you, is 3.25 miles on the new course, the most exacting test of stamina you will find for a staying National Hunt chaser. He barely stayed when winning the Browns Advisory last year. They've tried 2 ways to get close to Galopin Des Champs at Leopardstown, and they can't do it. He doesn't stay. So you say about Corto Star and Denman, they both stayed the Gold Cup trip because they both won Gold Cups. He doesn't stay. In a million years, he doesn't stay. Like, what would you do? Why would you go and run a horse, a nice young horse who might develop stamina, because the likes of Imperial Commander won the Ryanair and then stepped forward with age? Why would you go and bottom him in a Gold Cup that he can't win when you can pick up this, develop him forward, or not run here and go to Aintree? Cheltenham isn't the be-all and end-all. JP is not a syndicate of 20 builders who would love to have a runner at Cheltenham. He's got loads of horses that can go there. He can supplement Gavin Cromwell's horse. He could supplement the Mangan's horse, Jimmy Mangan's horse, to go to the Gold Cup. There's just no need. This horse is a really good horse, but he doesn't stay. I backed him. He was my first anti-post bet for the Ryanair directly after the Browns because I didn't believe he would stay the Gold Cup trip. I hope they come here. This is his best chance of winning. He's gone a bit short now, but I banged on about this horse for the Ryanair for some time, so hopefully a few people paid attention. Il Francais is an ideal pacemaker for him. It'll just be a question of which hill Il Francais declines to go up, whether it's the hill down the back or the hill up the home straight, because he's a flat track bully, but he'll put a nice bit of spice into this. The horse at a price that I think is interesting is Jungle Boogie, 8-1 each way. He tanked for the Gold Cup last year, got tired late on. I actually said going back through them, I actually said on the preview pod with TC on the Friday one that we did last year that he'd be really interesting in the Ryanair next year. Won at Ascot an intermediate chase. It wasn't much of a race, but he jumped violently out to his left and still had enough to win that. I think he's got quite a big engine. He's clearly hard to train. If he goes here, each way he'd be the play. But Factofile is by far and away the best horse in this race, and would not stay the Gold Cup trip.
Okay, well, this is what it's all about. Game of opinions. I do believe that Leopardstown and Galopin de Champs playground, he looked like he couldn't, but I don't think that that means that this horse hasn't got the stamina or hasn't got the ability. I think they're literally going just down the easy route, and they probably should just be running him in the bowl at Aintree, and just leave it and not do it. But they're obsessed with Cheltenham. They're obsessed with having another green and gold winner, and they'd much rather, I'd say, the JP McManus crew seeing him at the top of a betting list for a race like this than having to stare down the barrel at a Galopin de Champs again in a race where, you know, we say this all the time, the horses aren't completely bulletproof. There is a chance that Galopin de Champs just misses one, like he did all those years ago as a novice at Cheltenham. So you can't be scared of one horse, and it cries out to me that they are. So I'd love to have seen it happen, but Ross believes that he was always a 2.5 miler. TC and I believe that he should be a Gold Cup horse through and through. So Factofile wins with different reasoning behind it. I get to the end of that one. As we move on from the Ryanair to the Stayers Hurdle. Right, from one race with differing opinions to the other. Right, this is a race that I can't. Well, I don't know. I feel like there is one person on this podcast who does have a clear and quite strong opinion on a horse in here, and I'm going to hand over to TC because Teopu, he's a bit of an enigma in my mind because I don't really know what we've got, and I don't like the fact that you only see a horse once and then you don't see him again. But that's the way that Gordon Elliott's played it. Are you happy with his prep-in? Are you happy that he's done the same route? Albeit he won the Hatton's Grace the year before last, and this year he's been beaten by either on song or below par Lossiemouth.
Just wins. Just wins. He does. He's the best horse in the race by some considerable distance.
But how can you say that? We don't know. We don't know.
We do. What about this race last year?
On
But
very
how many of
soft
these
ground.
ran this race last year?
Yeah, it's a very different race.
Look, the opposition in this Stayers is weak, right? The fact that I've bet Home by the Lee in this contest for the last 2 years, and he's finished 3rd and 5th, he's run okay, and now he's coming into this year's race as a second favourite. That shows it's a weak Stayers. If T Hooper rocks up, he will win this race. That is the end, be all and end all. And at 5-4, is that not just a great price? This horse deserves more than the 50% market share. It should be odds on. Therefore, he wins. I don't need to go into any more detail. He's just the best horse in the race.
Okay, Ross has touched on this. This is definitely a different race. TC doesn't believe it's a better race. It's a different race. We have new, possibly improving types. Lucky Place could be that one. And I don't know about you all, but that 4th on the Coral Cup was a screamer for me last year, considering that the majority of Nicky Henderson's horses didn't even run at the festival. Is he the one that could give Teopu, who's probably been lucky that it's been a pretty average group of stayers, is he the one that could give him something to think about stepping up and trip?
Yeah, I mean, Teopu was the fastest of the slow ones last year, wasn't he? He was against a bunch of veterans, Paisley Park and dear old Dash or Drasher. Drying ground, you have to say, is a concern. I know he went to Punchestown and won on drying ground, but that wasn't a particularly deep race. Drying ground is a concern. Beaten by Lossiemouth is no disgrace at all in the Hatton's Grace. The big concern is that Beacon's Edge, rated 143, was only 5 lengths behind and wasn't going away. He beat old exposed horses last year. I completely agree with TC. He's the best horse in the race on figures, but the younger horses have a chance to step up. Lucky Place in particular, because he's yet to race over this trip. And I just think there's some decent strength and depth amongst the young ones. Hidden Valley Lake stayed really strongly at Ascot. You'd have to give a run last time, but that was too bad to be true. The Wall Park, I think, could run here. He's got course form. He stays really well. But the two I like at prices, Lucky Place, 2 from 2 this season. Won the Ascot Hurdle, won the Ralkiel in really good form, staying strongly. He looks uncomplicated. He looks like he's crying out for further. He flew home in the Coral Cup last year, finished 4th. As you said, he was the only horse in Nicky Henson Yard that ran anywhere near his form. He's 5-1. He's my nap on the Thursday. It's a weak enough day for me on the Thursday. Factofile is just too short to be put up as a nap. And I will take a look each way on Mystical Power as well. 2 really poor runs this year over 2 miles. You know, there's nothing to particularly advance his claims from this year, but he was tough and durable last year and ran to a good level of form. Annie Power is down, nearly won this race, probably should have won this race. She probably went a bit too keen through it. They often crawl as well in this, and TC loves that, you know, when they crawl and get done for speed. If they do crawl in this, Mystical Power is the fastest horse, you know, over the final couple of furlongs. 14 to 1 each way, I thought was a decent price. So I'll take those 2, but Lucky Place at 5 to 1, I think is a decent bet.
Yeah, they're 2 very different horses, aren't they? Lucky Place is the one that's improving. He could be even better over 3, whereas Mystical Power feels like it's been a real backup option because every other option hasn't really worked out with him, and they thought he could have been a champion hurdler, but he now looks too slow. So they're very different types of horses, but could both have the class. So Lucky Place at 5 to 1 for Ross, and Mystical Power at 14 to 1, and TC, as he said, Teapo just wins, keeps it simple. Right, we're going to go for the handicaps, and those that might be screaming at me, what about the now newly formed Jack Richards' Novices Chase? Tongue tie. The Jack Richards Novices Chase. Well, yes, it was just a Novice Chase prior. Now it's a limited handicap chase, so it comes in our handicap. So hence why I've left this one to later on in the day, even though it's possibly still of a high level, but it's one of the races where the conditions have changed, so now you must have had at least 3 chase runs. This race was actually run in these types of conditions from 2005 to 2020, and standout winners were the likes of A Plus Tard in 2019, who won off a mark of 144. So I think essentially what we've got here, we've got horses that are on the up, but they're not right at the very top yet, and they potentially could be the real staying chasers of the future. With that in mind, we've probably got horses who are reaching their peak from a handicap perspective. Another green and gold anti-post favourite with Jaguar for Oliver Greeno and Josh Guerrero, green and gold of James McManus, I should say. Joseph O'Brien, who interestingly said that he's got more horses going to Cheltenham than he leaves back at home from his jump string, which is a great indictment for the quality of jumpers that he has, considering he's predominantly a flat trainer, but he's just got so much good ammunition. Nürburgring is second favourite, and then we've got Asian Master, Firefox, Answer to Cafe, an interesting one that I'll be talking about a bit later for Terence O'Brien. Ross, have you got a big opinion in this? Because it has changed somewhat, but it's gone back to how we used to know the race.
Yeah, well, it used to be an open handicap, didn't it? This is limited to 145, so that probably made it a little bit harder to get a horse into this, because you want to get them in. The band is probably going to be quite small. It'd be interesting to see, you know, what percentage of these are rated £5 plus higher this time next year. I would suggest certainly more than 50%. Jaguar, I don't think he jumps well enough in a packed field. I have a real problem with him. I have a bit of a problem with John Joe O'Neill Jr. over fences, I have to be honest. There's something about the partnership between him and chase horses, and particularly big, strong chase horses, that I just can't get on board with, I'm afraid. You know, very good jockey in every other aspect. It's just not for me. There's no slight on him. Springwell Bay is in here as well. I wonder, because Jaguar runs here, whether Springwell Bay, who is qualified for the plate, might go there, where he might be one of the few novices taken on exposed handicappers. That might be my angle with him. I think there's a really well plotted horse here, Nürburgring, off 143, £3 Irish tax for Joseph O'Brien, £7 lower than his hurdle mark, and I think his hurdle mark is still pretty lenient. He's been patiently ridden every single chase run over 2 miles. I mean, they've not made a particularly big secret of what they're trying to do, I don't think. He stayed on well in the Triumph, was beaten 13 lengths behind Mansborough. He'll need to improve his jumping, but I think that will improve when he's allowed to actually go and use himself and jump a fence, rather than being worried about making up too much ground. I think he's got outstanding credentials. Would just point out, Joseph O'Brien, 6% winners to runners, and he had a winner yesterday, which took him off, or the day before yesterday, which took him off 0. A lot of those have been at Dundalk on the flat, but it is just a mild concern that they're not absolutely dancing out of their skin. But I think Nürburgring's got a really good chance. One that I don't think will get in, and I think they've probably not campaigned him aggressively, after Shambally Kid, off a mark of 129. He got a £5 hike, so they did quite well there. He's £6 lower than his hurdle mark. He ran really well in the Coral Cup last year. His debut one was really strange. He absolutely ballooned the first fence. He was really big and novice-y, warmed into it, jumped beautifully, and then weakened out of it in the close stages at Naas. And they dropped him right back in trip. It's too short for him. He's definitely better than 129. Wherever he goes in a handicap this spring, follow him for goodness sake. But I don't think he's going to get in here, which is a shame.
Okay, as you say, top mark of 145 gets you into this. You actually mentioned Springwell Bay. He's a horse that had 6 entries, I think it was. It's difficult to know where exactly they will go, whether they'll keep him in the handicap. He's also got graded options as well. So TC, this is a kind of race where you still don't really know what's going to pitch up. So difficult to get too overly interested at this stage. Might be one for the daily pods. So if you don't have something for this, what do you have outside of this race and in the other handicaps?
Yeah, I'm going to be ducking the Jack Richards Novices Chase. As you say, it's difficult to know who's going to go there. I did spend an hour and a half trying to watch replays on the plane back from Riyadh. Shout out to the Wi-Fi, by the way, on the plane. It was quite good. But I couldn't find any selection. So yeah, it's complete duck for me. Watch the daily pods. When it comes to others, there's a race I love on a Thursday, the Pertemps Final. It's a race that I've had good success in, not every year. I'm not kind of boasting in that regard, but I just a couple of plot jobs back in the day where I've managed to land nice prizes, like Cider Bartlett being one. So it's a race that I try to look at every single year and try to find a horse or two. And I have a system, which is just to focus on that qualifier at Leopardstown on Christmas. Well, not Christmas Day, but a couple of days after Christmas Day. Pick a couple of horses there that qualified, that shaped nicely, and you generally get pretty good prices because they don't tend to run them between that race at Leopardstown and Cheltenham Festival. And also, if they do run them, they're usually beaten because they're trying to look after their mark. It's just quite a nice angle. And there are 2 horses from that Pertemps qualifier at Leopardstown on December 28th. I want to be following in the Pertemps final. The first is Feet of a Dancer, who is regularly shaped like a big handicap is within this mare's grasps. She has a very high cruising speed. She moves through the race beautifully. And then after the last, she down tools. But it's not her not wanting to win. I just don't think she's been 100% fit and protecting mark, basically. These connections have done very well with a similar type in the past who actually came to win a race at Cheltenham, and I can't remember the horse's name, but it ran in the purple silks, and I think it was the Pertemps final actually. But the way she shaped at Christmas was just very eye-catching to me. I've had a bet on her around 14-1. I know she's available around 10s with SBK right now, which is still fair. I think Feet of a Dancer goes extremely close in the Pertemps final, and there's one other at a huge price in the Pertemps final that also catches my eye, and that is What's Available. Now, if you watch that qualifier back from Leopardstown, there is one horse that is finishing with a head of steam down the outside, and that is What's Available. He flew home for second, the most eye-catching performance of the race. Subsequently came out and showed absolutely nothing next time. So you have to put a line straight through that to give him a chance here. But he's around 33-1, which is an extremely good price. And maybe if we're looking at a big odds in a Pertemps final, which is a race to do that, then What's Available can be the secondary play. But Feet of a Dancer would be my number 1 pick.
Yeah, I think you're thinking about Mrs. Milner for Paul Nolan.
That's it.
Yeah, great shrewd trainer, I think, Paul Nolan. Feet of a Dancer at 7-1. I also rewatched that race back, where What's Available. Looking at his comments in running, it says that he lost his position as he was interfered with by that loose horse. And actually, he was running pretty well up until that point, but he's tripled the price because of that poor run. So I was interested. I just wanted to watch that back based on those 2 selections. So yeah, 31-1 about a horse that really was probably a bit unlucky. And then 7-1 for Feet of Dancer. So I like those angles in a race that has served TC very well indeed. Back to Ross for any more selections in this on this day, because as I've been trying to do every day, I want to give something where we can all agree on for our multiple, but I'm struggling with day 3. It's been a little bit fiery today, but are you with or against TC, or you're going completely separate?
Oh, no, I looked at the Pertemps and completely agree with what TC said. No, I haven't looked at the Pertemps in any great depth. It's a race where you have to give plenty of time because you've got to watch it and then not believe what you're seeing and try and create a narrative that suits what you want to see, really. So I've not looked at that yet. 2 other handicaps on the day. The Plate, which I think will be a different race this year. As I said, there won't be many unexposed novices in there. My old pal Fugitive, he's off a mark of 148. He's a course and distance winner off 151. He was second in 2023 off 149. There's going to be less unexposed horses here. He'd need some rain. The life he ran wouldn't be great, but he ran in the Denman Chase, didn't stay. I thought he would, didn't stay. And when you look at it on the bare facts and figures, he ran really well against some higher rated horses, giving away weight. He wasn't very well advantaged by the weights on that occasion. He'd be of interest if the rain comes. The other one, at a big price, 35 to 1, is Xana here. He's off a mark of 150. He only got £1 Irish tax. He ran really well in graded races. He was fourth in last year's Turners. Behind Grey Dawning won it. JLo was third. They're both rated now high up in the 160s. He runs here off a mark of 150. He's been a bit frustrating, but I just think this is a sort of race that could suit him, sort of just, lob round and come with a wet sail late on. He'd be interested at 35 to 1 with SBK. And then the Kim Muir, this, I really hope Neil Holland runs him here. This would be about my handicap pick of the week, actually. Transmission in the Kim Muir, off a mark of 133. He has run exclusively over fences at Cheltenham this year. That tells me they're getting him to have a good look at the track. He was an eye catcher behind Highland under, I think, James Bowen, where he didn't do a tap. And you could almost see the fear on James Bowen's face as he came down the hill, carting away with him. Luckily, lack of race fitness hit him and he weakened up the hill and got beaten far enough. He then won cosily under Patrick Mullins in a fairly moderate race, but won it really nicely. Didn't do an awful lot to win, and then kept on well behind Haiti Couleurs. I like the Patrick Mullins angle. I hope that is we're going for the Kim Muir. Patrick Mullins is going to ride because Willie only has one entry. It's JP owned, so Patrick's going to be potentially available. Just the drying ground might make the novice, the handicap chase on the first day, the old National Hunt Chase, might appeal with a little bit of extra trip. But I hope he runs here. If he does, he's my handicap pick of the week off a mark of 133 for a really, really astute trainer.
Okay, so a reminder, that's Transmission in the Kimmy at 14 to 1 for Ross. Got Xana here at 35 to 1 as well. Newburying, you said, in the Jack Richards. And that's what I'm just going to quickly add. I've got a selection in that race. Answer to Cafe. It's a Terence O'Brien, a novice. So he kind of lacks the experience that some have, but I like his profile. He was a highly tried hurdler. He was actually fourth in the Martin Pipe, keeping on really well indeed. He's a half-brother to She Wears It Well. A very highly regarded and successful hurdler herself, and this horse being by Cave Tara, I expect him to improve with age and has done over fences. He bolted up last time, and although he's been given a stiff mark of 142, I still think there's plenty of improvement to come from a smaller yard indeed. And then I'm going to add to that and echo the sentiments of one of my fellow podcast pals from the Tiafoe Lucky Place argument, and that's going to go with Ross and Lucky Place, as I do think he's a real improver in the stayers. I don't know if agreeing with me would be necessarily a great thing, but let's hope so. By numbers, we need to have the moral support. But yeah, look, his form with Gowell Road is good. He's unbeaten in his two since that excellent run in the Coral Cup last year. He is stepping into uncharted territory, going up in trip, but he's ran right through the line over two, as I said, in that race last year, which is worth re-watching. So keen to see how Lucky Place gets on. So let's move on to day 4, the final day of the Cheltenham Festival. It is the big one. It's Gold Cup day. And I'm going to remind you of the offers that SBK have got. We have got a free £2 multiple every day of the festival. We've tried to give you a few selections each day when we've been in agreement, but it was quite difficult for day 3, I'm afraid. Then we do also have a 20% winnings boost on the first race every day of the festival, and there is a Cheltenham bet bundle. You can receive £50 of horse racing multiples for just £30. So thanks to SBK, we can kick off with the Triumph Hurdle. Right, now this is a race where you've got to look for those with the French angles. You've got to see the ones that are bred in France, who started their careers in France. But then, curveball, we've got a couple of horses who don't have anything like that at all in their profile at the top of the betting, taking over the obvious one, which is Le Lambeau, who does tick those boxes. Was a horse that they found in France, has got all the conditioning from France, French bred by an exciting young sire called Nirvana Duberlet. He's up against East India Dog, who currently is just ahead of him in the betting. He was a very good and highly tried flat horse before switching to jumps, and that's the same as Hello Neighbour. Didn't have a huge amount of experience in the flat, but clearly was a horse of high note and won on a couple of occasions for Gavin Cromwell. So this is an interesting one, Ross. I'll start with you first. I like the makeup of this race. I think it looks competitive. We always have a good competitive Triumph hurdle. Is this a race where we could see East India Dock showing off that you don't have to be from France and you don't have to be French bred? You don't have to be necessarily bred for the jumps game to be a very accomplished and natural hurdler.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not looking forward to this race, Jess, because I absolutely love Lalamba. He's everything I like in a horse. He's good looking, he's tall, he's athletic, he's got loads of potential. And I really want to be with him, but I've got to try and put my head on rather than my heart. And you have to say that the former Ascot has been let down by Mondoman. I said before Kempton that you want Mondoman, if you like Lalamba, you want Mondoman to do the same as he did against Lalamba, but win. He did the same as he did against Lalamba. He pulled far too hard, didn't jump very well, and he got beaten by some pretty moderate horses. That does just make Lalamba's form look a little bit questionable. He's a gorgeous horse. I think he'd be the best of these. I'm hoping that he could be another Sergino. But I just think on all the information you've got, I think probably at 2-1 East India Dock is probably a good price, because Lulamba is stretching East India Dock's price, if you see what I mean. He's rated 142. He's 3 from 3, including twice over Cheltenham. He jumps really well. He stays well. He settles well. He's had the perfect preparation. They've gone everywhere they want to go, done what they want to do. He's a good flat horse. He stays much further, 2 miles on the flat, so stamina's going to be no issue. And stayers generally win this race. It's 2 mile 1 on the new course. I think he's got loads going for him. 2-1. I make him a nap on the final day. Hello Neighbour, I don't like. I thought he was absolutely gasping for the line at Leopardstown last time. Maybe he aisles in front, but I'm not convinced by that. I just don't think he's got quite the same degree of stamina and class. If you wanted one at a big price, I wouldn't put you off St. Lucy. She's by Great Pretender, so she'll like this drying ground. She was a really easy winner at Punchestown on her debut. She beat Luke's Tipler, who's rated 122, absolutely thrashed him. Wasn't getting the mare's allowance, if I remember correctly. Too bad to be true last time. It was a slowly run race. She pulled far too hard. I think she just ran herself into a hole. 26-1. She's going to come here because she's got nowhere else she can go. I think each way she's worth a shout.
Yeah, she's a horse I actually tipped up, and I was very disappointed to see the way that she ran, but that was definitely too bad to be true. But East India Dock, it's interesting. James Owen has said that he's different to his brother Burdett Road, and that he's a more straightforward horse. You can see Burdett Road can be a bit fiery. You know, he's got so much aggression in his racing, whereas East India Dock definitely knows how to settle, and that'll play a massive part in a race like this. Whereas interestingly, Lalamba is very different to Sergino. I know that they're not related, but there have been comparisons. And Nicky Henderson said he's a much taller horse. He's not sort of as low to the ground and sort of pecks it over his jumps like Sergino did as a hurdler. So for that reason, you kind of feel like, well, Eastern Dock is more of the kind of type that you want to see in a Triumph hurdle like this. I can see Ross nodding his head, which I'm pleased to see. TC, do you agree with that yourself?
Spot on. Yeah, I agree with everything both you and Ross have said here. From a price perspective, it is ludicrous that Lalamba's got roughly the same percentage chance of winning according to the market as East India Dock. Considering the form has been let down, and also East India Dock has done absolutely nothing wrong and has looked pretty good. I actually think he's got enough talent to win the majority of the last 10 renewals of the Triumph. If you go back through, I think he's a 150 horse, and if he runs to 150, Lulamba's going to have to be the next Sergino to beat him. Look, he stays. He jumps well. He will love the predicted ground. He's won on the new course. He's a 2-time winner at Cheltenham. He represents a trainer who knows the time of day with this type. There's just a lot to like about East India Dock, and he should be favourite. I'm also going to put up another horse each way as well, because I saw a price on SBK, which is, in my opinion, ludicrous. 35-1, Lady Vega Allen. That is crazy big. If you're looking for an each way play at bigger odds, East India Dock may be shorter than 2-1 by the time you're watching this. I think Lady Vega Allen is the right choice. Now, I know she has an entry elsewhere, but I did see a stable tour where Willie said she has a lot of talent. We're going to go to the Triumph, which to me sounds pretty positive for a chance of running in this race. Willie's won the Triumph twice in the last 5 years with fillies. Again, that's a positive. He's not afraid to take on the boys with a 4-year-old filly in this kind of contest. She will relish the faster ground. And I thought in that race where Hello Neighbour beat her last time, she actually shaped like the best horse in there. She made a big move from the back of the pack, travelled up beautifully, and then just wasn't able to sustain her effort late. But the quicker ground should enable her to do that. And I wouldn't be surprised if she played a big role in here at huge odds.
Okay, we've got two sort of each way selections from Ross and TC to join East India Dock. Lady Vega, Alain in here, and San Lucy. Just to add to East India Dock, what a shoe-in would he have been if he had a handicap entry off 137? Quite a nice rating, isn't it, really? I know there wasn't really any options, but that's not too bad. You think when some of these inexperienced horses, or even types that haven't at least raced in grade 2 level at Cheltenham, are rated a hell of a lot higher. But East India Dock, there's a lot of confidence around him. I do just think that potentially, maybe because he doesn't have the same sexy profile as some of the others, that he's maybe being overlooked a bit. But I can imagine his price is going to come in. Confidence here, definitely on this podcast from East India Dock. In the Triumph Hurdle on Friday, Gold Cup day. Let's move on to the Mayor's Chase. Lacks the quality and probably the intrigue as some of the others, so probably will kind of keep this quite quick. I know that you probably agree with that, TC. What stands out for you, if anything?
Boring! Oh, what a boring race. I literally looked at this for 10 minutes. I have no interest here, Jess. Dinah Blue's the horse to beat. I much prefer her to Allegory de Vassi. I don't care.
Okay.
Boring.
I mean, it poses a question: what does this race really offer? Obviously, it's very valuable for mares, but they could be running in the Ryanair, I'd imagine, and that would give the Ryanair more clout to stay when we've been bashing that too, Ross.
Yeah, the 3 mares races this year are weak, aren't they? And people that like to throw stones at the fact that the mares races are in the Cheltenham Festival have got pretty good ammunition this year. They miss the fact that it's done such a wonderful thing for the price breeders get for the fillies at the sales, and that shouldn't be overlooked, I should say. But yeah, this race, you could take this race out and you wouldn't dilute the festival in any way, shape, or form. And I think we need to look at it because there's plenty in here that could run elsewhere or not run at Cheltenham, heaven forbid. Haven't all got to run at Cheltenham. I agree with TC. I think Only by Night won't stay. Bioluminescence and Limerick Lace need a bog. They're not going to get that, or they're unlikely to get that. Dino Blue loves the ground. She got beaten last year because Mark Walsh was concerned about her stamina on the ground. He gave Limerick Lace too much rope under a good ride from Keith Donoghue. She scooted away, can never get back to it, but she definitely stays the trip. She's run well since she was behind Banbridge at Punchdown. That's decent form. Ran well enough in the hilly way behind Enegamine, and then beat Allegory de Vassi at Naas, giving her £6. Now only has to give her £5. She'll improve more for the better ground. She's the fastest horse in the race. I think she'll win. She's 6-4. She's short enough, but she looks like she's got an outstanding chance.
Okay, we won't talk about this too much more. I might just add Telepathique. I think she could have been a little bit overlooked for Lucy Wadden, around about 11-1. She's that old French family on the dam side, supported by Fresh Young Stallion and Telescope. She won last time at Huntingdon despite jumping markedly out to her left. Cheltenham should be a bit of a plus for her. I think she's a bit of an each-way prize. She already beat Brideshill last time out, and I think that set a bit of a solid benchmark. So I hope that she can give Lucy Wadden something to shout about. But let's move on to the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle, and those with that have been with us throughout. Thank you. Or those that have just joined us for the Gold Cup day. We spoke about this race whilst previewing the Turners because the Yellow Clay is a horse that TC has been waiting for since last March to run in the Albert Bartlett. So if it comes Wednesday and we've seen that he's been declared for this race, things are going to get a little bit more exciting for you, TC.
Yeah, fingers crossed. The Yellow Clay is my pick in this race regardless. Well, I mean, obviously, if he doesn't run, it's not my pick. But yeah, anti-post play, the one anti-post play I've got, hopefully they send him here. It's the right spot for him. If he goes to the Turners instead, then I feel like they've made a little bit of an error. But look, I hope he goes to the Albert Bartlett. If he doesn't, and he's not in this race and he goes to the Turners, then I'll probably have a little interest in Wendigo at a big price. He's solid. I think he's overlooked due to connections. And last time up, because he didn't win by overly far at a very short price, I think he'll be too big a price in this race, the Albert Bartlett. So I'll probably have a little, and I mean little, each way on him if the Yellow Clay is not in the field. If the Yellow Clay is in the field, I'm nervy.
Okay, right. Well, let's see how this plans out for you. When to go at a bit of an each way price. There's probably a lot of each way value around in this, Ross, because this is a race which has turned out a few surprises over the years. Stella Story being one of them at 33 to 1. You only have to go back to 2019 when Manila Indo won it at 50 to 1. Do you have something at a big price?
Yeah, I mean, so like TC, I'm hoping Yellow Clay comes here from an anti-post perspective. I agree with him on Wendigo. I think that form hasn't been given enough credit. I think he's a nice-looking horse. He's going to have plenty of experience. He'll benefit for the step up in trip, so I like him. Argento Boy, I would give him a shout at a decent price. He was way too free when he was behind the big Westerner at Punchdown on his debut. He was beaten a length. She's much shorter in the betting. She beat him quite comfortably, but he did an awful lot wrong on that occasion. He was then really poor at Leopardstown at Christmas, but that was too bad to be true. And then much better last time at Punchestown, staying really strongly on desperate ground. That takes a bit of getting. Quite a classy looking horse. I think he'd be a better chaser, but in a race that you can get some big priced horses, I wouldn't put you off him at a decent price.
Okay, right, Argento Boy. I'm just going to add that the mare, the Big Western, has been a bit of a talking horse. She has a lovely profile. She's a point-to-point winner. She actually beat Argento Boy in her maiden in November, and that horse has obviously franked the form since. She's a half-sister to Stairway Faye, so that would be some achievement by her dam, Augusta Bay, if she was to produce 2 winners of the race. And just being a bit conscious of her price she's been over bet because she's been a bit of a Cheltenham preview talking horse, but interesting to see how she gets on. Right, let's move on to the Gold Cup, the big one at 4 o'clock. And again, with the Ryanair in mind, we sort of talked about this. Many horses have dodged Galopin Des Champs because they've seen that he has looked to be, frankly, even better this year, going for his 3rd Gold Cup, looking to join the likes of Best Mate. And he, look, his jumping is just been so rock solid, and that's the only thing you'd have to imagine is going to stay away from between him and winning this race if he does have a slight error anywhere around, and that could happen. But there's also the other argument that the drying ground could play in the favour of Banbridge, who looks to go here after his win in the King George. Then you've got the likes of Monty Star. He's a horse that's already been beaten by Galopin Des Champs. L'Empresse is going to give this another go. He was 4th in this last year. He was pulled up without really having a race last time at Ascot. But it's going to be a small field Gold Cup, Ross. One of the smallest we've seen for some time. Is it Galopin Des Champs' just race to lose?
Oh no, I think he's Layer of the Week. No, it's absolutely his race to lose. He scared them all off. I mean, I actually put him up in a Racing TV article after the festival last year, and the amount of abuse I got for putting him up at, I think he was 7 to 4, something like that, 2 to 1 maybe. There was all these lovely novices coming through, and no horse to win 3 Gold Cups, and he'll be susceptible with age. He's as good, if not better than ever this year. He's had a perfect prep through. His run in the John Durkan was the best it had ever been. Won the saddles, went back and won the Irish Gold Cup. It's very difficult to see a horse beating him, other than the fact he's a horse, he's flesh and blood. As you said, he can overjump like he did in the Turners all those years ago. He could be under the weather, blah, blah, blah. There's no such thing as a certainty. But in my lifetime, I think he's as close to a certainty as you'll get in a Cheltenham Gold Cup. It's a weaker race than last year because he scared them all off. Banbridge, I think, will stay the trip and drying ground will suit him, but he's not in the same class as Galopin Des Champs. If you wanted a bet, and you don't need to have a bet in every race, but if you wanted to have a bet and you've missed the prices on Galopin Des Champs, I think L'Empresse each way at 20 to 1. This is a weaker race than last year. He finished 4th. I thought he got a little bit tired. He hadn't had an ideal prep last year in terms of race fitness. Not an ideal prep this year in terms of pulling up at Ascot, but he got pulled up early. His jumping slightly fell apart. I assume they've schooled him well since. He's better going this way round. I think he could run into the frame. But to be honest, it's a race I'm going to watch probably behind the sofa that Galopin Des Champs doesn't do anything stupid, wins 3 Gold Cups, and then I'll back him to win 4 next year.
Gosh, well, yeah, look at the way he's going, considering just a 9-year-old this time next year at 10. He's still pretty fresh-legged, isn't he? It's something he's going to have to look pretty remarkable from a novice perspective to frighten him from a betting perspective for the 2026 Gold Cup. So can he join one of the greats? It feels like quite an obvious answer, TC, really. Banbridge, Joseph O'Brien's horse, He did have the fact that Paul Tannen was riding him in the King George. Even Paul Tannen, who'll be riding Galopin de Champs, sort of knows this horse pretty well now and knows every aspect of him. So I think that's probably going to help him riding Galopin de Champs. But even that, can't really see him getting that close to him. And I think Ross is right. This is a weaker race compared to the last two runnings.
Yep, completely agree with everything already said. I'm as big a fan as the next man with Banbridge, having bet him in the King George and several times prior to that. Can't have him in this race to win. Might run a place. He's kind of the same talent, in my opinion, going into the Gold Cup as a Gold Cup horse as Monty's Star. So maybe each way you'd look to the bigger price of those two, which is Monty's Star at this point. But I've already started drafting my Galopin de Champs tweet for when he wins.
Okay. Well, we'll keep our eyes out firmly, waiting for that. TC, looking forward to it. Make some sort of good pun, good judge, good comment, and keep us all going once we got to the end of 4 days at Cheltenham, and let's hope it ends on a high. But we've also got plenty of other races. We've obviously got the final race of the day, is the Martin Pipe, where if we're still hungry to find winners, that would be a race to keep on top of. But it's probably likely to be one of those days which will be kept probably best saved for the daily pod for Ross and TC, unless there's something shouting out at either of you at this stage. TC, will come to you first.
2 horses in the county hurdle for me, Jess. Now, the county hurdle over the last 10 years, you look down the Roll of Honour, in 9 of the 10 years, it's been won by either Willie Mullins or Dan Skelton. So I'm hoping that trend continues. 1 from each stable. I don't know whether Absurd is going to run in this race or not. This is the biggest dilemma I've had over the course of the week. Some people say he's going to run. Some people say he's not going to run. He doesn't feature in any stable tours I've seen, but some people are still betting him for the race. God knows. Anyway, I'm siding with the other horse owned by the same team and also trained by Willie Mullins in Ethical Diamond, who last season I thought shaped really well at big prices, when quite clearly he wasn't the finished article. During the summer, he proved his talent on the flat by running very well in a couple of competitive affairs. And then this season, put a line through his first start, but last time up, he was very impressive. I think he's well handicapped, Ethical Diamond. He could be a good play at around 10, 12 to 1. The other horse is Valgrand, who is also around 10 to 1 for Dan Skelton this time. His novice hurdle form at the start of the season was very strong, and he was actually pushing Potter's Charm in those kind of contests. I don't know whether they just over-raced him or what happened, but he lost his form in his last 2 starts. Maybe soft ground is a reason there, but Dan said he's been working really well in the build-up to this. Again, he looks well handicapped. The return to Cheltenham should be a positive. I think he's a good play as well. So Ethical Diamond and Valgrand in the county hurdle. Who knows what's happening with Absurd?
Yeah, who knows? But they've definitely been waiting for him for something. Valgrand, they did mention that they wouldn't mind a little bit of rain for him, but they've said that about a few of them. So we'll leave that to your imagination. Ross, what are you looking forward to from handicaps on Friday?
Well, so I read or saw that Absurd, Willie said he was trying to get ready for a foreign flat race, which his name will have passed me by, as you won't be surprised, last couple of weeks ago, and he wasn't pleasing him, but he's pleased him more the last week. He's concerned about whether he'd be ready first time up. I agree with Valgrand. I imagine he had a case of ulcers through the winter. Once he got his mark, it was ulcers, and mark came down, and they're all be better now. I just worry about him on lively ground, actually, myself. But I think he's the right sort of profile for the race. 2 for Willie Mullins. One I'm really sweet on is Carghese off a mark of 142. Only £2 Irish tax. She was way too keen when she was beaten on a return, but she coped with the sounder surface, so that was a tick in the box there. Excellent course form, second in the Triumph behind Majborough. She won nicely at Punchestown after that. She's 6 to 1, skinny enough, I suppose, for a handicap, but I think strong pace will help her settle. She'll come home strong in a county. I do like the look of her, particularly if Paul Tanner were to be on board. And then another one, Paul Tanner definitely won't ride him, but Toon Servator. He's off 145, which is a £4 Irish tax. He won a tactical royal bond by having the better change of gear, but it was still a decent race. He's a second season novice, but he's fairly unexposed. There won't be many novices in this. He's 25 to 1. I thought that was a decent each way price. And then the closing race of the day, the Martin Pipe. No ordinary Joe off a mark of 138. I thought he was a real eye catcher last time when instantly he was ridden by Callum Pritchard, who wouldn't have had many, if any, rides for Nicky Henderson. He's probably one of the better claimers in the UK this year. Ran well at Warwick, caught the eye. He was 7th last year, but Nick Henderson's form was poor last year, as we've discussed. Off 139, he was 4th or second of 139 the year before. So less novices in that race this year, I suspect. I think No Ordinary Joe is interesting in the Martin Pipe.
Okay, thank you very much. Very much interesting horses that we believe that might have been laid out for these races. I'm going to add to that. I think Voodoo has certainly been laid out for the Martin Pipe. I think her price is going to come right in around 7-1. It's all about Copec Demi and where he goes. But the Cheltenham form from December is red hot. The second Juez is obviously won the William Hill, the third, the fourth, all gone and won. And it's not just anything. They've won high class races. And I think Voodoo looks just improving rate of knots. We don't quite know her ceiling. It'll be interesting, I'd imagine, with Danny Gilligan back on board. I'm also going to give Carnique in the county. Quite tricky to work him out. Quite a high mark of 146, which is harsh. He did come with a huge reputation and he could still be better, but he's going to have to be pretty good to win a race at the county off that mark. State Man won off 141 just 3 years ago, but he's got a very solid profile. He is a horse that ran behind Romeo Coolio, which was a bit of a non-event as he had a bad jump early, which stuttered his chances. He then came from a long way back to finish second to Copec de Board in the Grade 1 at the Dublin Racing Festival last time. So if you like Copec de Board, and if you go right back to the beginning of this podcast, there's very much confidence behind him. Then you've got to wait right to the end of the festival to see how Carnique can do in a race like this, and to try and prove that form is right. So those are my selections to end off Friday, and that will round up our preview of the SBK Cheltenham podcast of 2025. Before we let you go, we are going to ask Ross and TC for their nap and next best for the whole festival. This has been murmured throughout. There might be a bit of deliberation, and I suppose we might qualify that with the fact that those daily podcasts might just help your confidence behind a few of them. But at this very early stage, Ross, what is your nap and next best for Cheltenham 2025?
At the prices, the nap will be Ballyburn, and let's play safe. Next best will be Dino Blue in the Mayor's Chase.
Okay, very good. Let's head back over to TC.
My nap is T Hoopu in the Stayers. 5-4 is way too big. And my next best, I'm going to go for a bit of a price. I could obviously put Copec de Board or Ballyburn in here, but I'll go for Feet of a Dancer in the Pertemps final.
Okay, and just to add to Fridays for a bit of fun, considering we have got that free £2 multiple for every day of the festival, and I try my best to pick out the ones that we agreed on for most days. But I think with Friday in mind, we've got to add East India Dock, Dino Blue, Galloping de Champ, and I need one more. Let's say potentially the Yellow Clay if he gets declared, because we'll all be very much hopeful. We've been singing his praises. So there we go. That is the multiple for Friday. SBK have offered so much, so big thanks to SBK. You've got that Cheltenham bet bundle. You'll receive £50 of horse racing multiples for just £30. You got that 20% winnings boost on the first race of every day of the festival, and as I said, you've got that free £2 multiple, which you've got to opt in. You've got 4 legs in that, so a lot of fun to be had. The SBK betting podcast you can now listen to on the horse racing page of the SBK site, so make sure to go there and click play. You can listen to day 1 and then come back and listen to day 2. You can do whatever you like, but don't forget we've also got the daily podcast, which Ross and TC will be on to give a bit of an update and probably a little bit more confidence or a move against one. Maybe there's been a ground change as well, so make sure you keep up to date. But all the Cheltenham content will be available on the SBK Cheltenham Hub in the app. The hub will be live on Monday the 10th and will be your one-stop shop for all things festival related, so make sure to get involved with that. And if you are a new SBK user, you'll get £40 in free bets when you sign up and bet £10 for the first time. And as we've said, there's so much to be had on the SBK app, so join there. Ross to TC, I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope you have some successful tipping and we line up for some great reviewing of this Cheltenham podcast. It's been a lot of fun. We've got a lot of opinions. Let's see who is right and let the best man win. Have a great Cheltenham 2025, everyone.